Great. Well, thank you very much for myself.
It's such a hard day. You know what I grabbed?
Chinese?
Oh, you have my sugar. Thank you.
Chinese, Bruce?
Hey, Mike,
It's like Village Gourmet.
no, it's a piece of pasta. It's a roll. It's a Portuguese roll. Yeah, I wish Village Gourmet was better. Okay, at 7:09, we will call this meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Sarah, are you here?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Loud and clear.
Loud and clear.
Thank
Okay,
you.
good.
Thank you, Ralph, for, you might want to put it on mute, and we won't have votes for a little bit.
Okay, I'll put you guys on mute.
We will start with Spotlight and then public comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In tonight's Spotlight, we have 2 awards. The first is Teacher of the Year, Glenn Kuchar. This year, Norwalk High science teacher Glenn Kuchar was selected as Norwalk's Teacher of the Year. Mr. Kuchar's selection followed his recognition at the Norwalk Excellence in Education Awards. Educators are nominated by their peers and endorsed by each school governance council, making them eligible to be considered for recognition as Norwalk's Teacher of the Year. Over the past 3 decades, Mr. Kuchar has taught physics, honors physics, AP physics, chemistry, forensics, and physical science. He is known for helping students understand subject matter from a historical and cultural perspective. Students also enjoy his creative labs, which help build the skills needed to problem solve in the global community. While Mr. Kuchar is STEM, which stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math, and HOT, Higher Order Thinking, while he has training in this, his influence extends to the entire school community with his ability to bridge science and the arts. Since joining Norwalk High, he has played an integral role in yearly musical performances as well. As an active member of the school community, Mr. Kuchar participates in multiple fundraising events, including Bears Beating Cancer, St. Baldrick's, senior and junior fashion shows, talent shows, and dodgeball tournaments. Known as a true team player amongst colleagues, he is a mentor and teacher to both students and teachers alike. Over the years, Mr. Kuchar has trained more than 200 adult teacher candidates throughout the state through Connecticut Alternate Route to Certification Program as the lead methods instructor for the physical sciences. Additionally, he was one of 3 representatives chosen from Connecticut to attend the Research Teachers Conference in Washington in 2017. He was also part of a University of Bridgeport strategy initiative on challenges of teaching physics in high-need schools in Connecticut and the recruitment of teachers in the area of STEM. The Board of Education is proud to honor Glenn as Norwalk's Teacher of the Year, and we are pleased to have him represent all of our committed and passionate NPS educators. Thank you, Glenn. Please come up.
I'm not doing science. And I'll mention that Glenn spoke at our at convocation this year, and one of the very dynamic, great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Our next award goes to Para-Educator of the Year, Donohue Tyner. We are proud to honor West Rocks Middle School's Donohue Tyner, who was recently named Norwalk Public Schools Para-Educator of the Year. Ms. Tyner was chosen for her dedication to special needs students and her commitment to the West Rocks community. In addition to assisting classroom teachers, Ms. Tyner supports the implementation of individual education plans for students and monitors their progress on an individual basis. She is recognized in the school community for her communication skills and her ability to form meaningful relationships with students and parents. Known for her ability to manage even the most challenging situations with kindness and competence, Ms. Tyner shows genuine concern for the well-being of those around her. She connects with students by telling them funny stories and having a hee-haw moment with them, while creating relationships of mutual respect and focusing on getting the work done. Ms. Tyner has been known to eat lunch with students, jump rope, shoot hoops, and even toss a football around. By meeting students in their environment, she has had success bringing high needs and mainstream students together. Ms. Tyner joined NPS in 2002 as a special education paraeducator at Merrimack. She has also held summer positions at PF Camp and Norwalk Parks and Rec. Before joining the West Rocks team in 2007, she worked at Nathan Hale. Nominated by staff members and selected by the West Rocks Middle School Governance Council, Ms. Tyner was honored, along with others throughout the district, with an Excellence in Educational Support Award last spring. The Board of Education is proud to honor Donna Tyner as Paraeducator of the Year and for all her hard work as she continues to prepare Norwalk students for a bright future. Thank you, Donna. Please come up.
Okay, our next agenda item is public comments. Before we do go to public comments, I'd like to just review some facts. My guess is most of tonight's public comments, which can be about, we don't have the same rules as the council. You can talk about anything you'd like, but I imagine most of tonight's public comments will focus on one of our action items on the agenda, which is the acceptance of the report and recommendation of the school start time committee's work. So it's going to be on school start times. So I just want to put some facts out here before, so we don't have to contest these in public comments. So we issued our strategic operating plan in 2016, and goal number 5 was to ensure safe and attractive schools that support student learning and provide a nurturing, inclusive environment with positive behavior interventions and supports at every school. And as part of that, we discussed our commitment to having a wellness committee and having as healthy a school environment as we can. This included start times as well as nutrition and food. In our retreat of 2018, we have our retreats every summer. We had a series, 27 of them, of priority implementation steps over the 18-19 school year. Step number 15 was to conduct a study and develop plans to address findings of the American Academy of Pediatrics and also the Center for Disease Control concerning later high school start times. As part of this, the central office did request funding for this effort in the 1920 school year, but the board, all 9 of us, felt that we needed more time, or not maybe all 9 of us, but a majority of us, of the 9, that we needed more time. It was premature to implement this in the 1920 school year, and we delayed any decision by a year. In that time period, the Healthy Start Times Committee was formed, and they had 11 meetings over the course of 12 months. There were 17 different groups of stakeholders represented on this committee, and this is all laid out in the report, which is on our website and has been widely distributed. There was a board workshop devoted to this exclusively on September 3rd of 2019. The Curriculum and Instruction Committee reviewed this, devoted their meeting to this as their principal topic on September 17th. With feedback from this, one of the things we heard from the public were concerns about traffic. And so myself as chair and Bruce Kimmel as chair of the Curriculum and Instruction Committee did meet with the city and with it, particularly with its Department of Transportation, Mobility, and Parking. Their traffic engineers, these are the city's traffic engineers, we discussed concerns about both the Highland Avenue corridor as well as the Strawberry Hill corridor. In addition, we then had a public forum devoted exclusively to this topic on October 7th. At that forum, we did get feedback from 4 students, all from Brian McMahon High School, and roughly a dozen parents, and I believe all but one were pretty much not in favor of changing the start times. The board's email address was publicized for those who couldn't attend any of these meetings, and we received close to 50 emails. And what I think I found interesting, and I would think all of you would as well, is that the traffic, while it varied, if you totaled it up, it was literally 50-50, 50 in favor and 50 against. It was a mix of students, parents, and I think employees as well. I think this should be compared, so we're talking about 50 emails, 16 public comments. We have 3,800 high school students as of September 13th, and we have 90,000 residents. So I know there have been statements made that we have not listened to the public, our minds have made up, a deal's already been cut. I think nothing could be further from the truth. And I think, this didn't just happen in the last 2 months. This has been going on for 18 months. Heidi Keys, who was our board representative on the Healthy Start Times Committee, went to several conferences over the course of several years. And Dr. Adamowski has been very interested in this topic since he got here 4 years ago. So with that being stated, we will start public comments, and our secretary, Mr. Meek. Yes.
One thing, if I might add, about the meeting with the city's Mayor Rilling was there, as well as the city's head of economic and community development. The director and staff, including their engineers of the Mobility, Transportation, and Parking Department of the city, they did back the initiative. They understand it's a health issue. They are going to put in their capital request for next year funds to hire a traffic consultant to ensure that implementation is done as smoothly as possible. We will be meeting in a few more months to talk about where we're at, what we still need to do, whatever traffic calming needs to take place in any part of the city, we will do that. And one last point, it's kind of interesting as background, this is something that's happening all across the country. Just this past few days, the state of California has mandated every one of its high schools beginning in 2022 will begin no earlier than 8:30, which I believe it was 8:30, which is the time that we have selected. Thank you very much.
Okay, Brian Meek, our secretary, handles public comments.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chairman. We have 16 speakers signed up, and I will offer an opportunity to anyone who did not sign up. As I call your name, please step to the podium, state your name. You have 3 minutes, and please be civil. The first is, and I'm sorry if I don't get these names right, there's a lot of scratch here. Beata Sanchez? Ms. Sanchez, 6 Pleasant Street, Norwalk? Okay, she has a note here. I'm against early start times. Maybe that was the extent. Maybe that was the extent of her statement. Next up, we have, and I'm sorry, Daniela Gongura, followed by Drew Patrick after Daniela.
Good evening. My name is Daniela Gongura, and I am a parent of a 3rd grader at Silver Mine Elementary, and also a small business owner of an after-school music program here in Norwalk. I admire and support the steps that are taking place to improve the mental health of our teenage students. Will this time change affect my school? Absolutely, but I can adjust. I may need to add an extra hour on the weekend or end lessons a little later during the week. It may also affect other extracurricular activities and other livelihoods, and I hope that they too will find a way to adjust. If we are truly concerned about the future health of our students, we should try and support the studies that are being put out there. The argument that we, the older generation, did just fine is not a fair argument. Students today are far more overscheduled than students were 20 years ago. I know this because I have been teaching for more than 20 years. Society keeps evolving due to the improvements in science, especially in the digital age, and we embrace these changes that help improve our lives. The microwave, the dishwasher, and most recently the iPhone. All these gadgets have made our lives more susceptible to time. But all this extra time we get from modern gadgets have only caused us to add more to our schedule, and we are all guilty of it. So maybe we need to listen to the study and give our teenagers the time they deserve to just rest their brain. In my field of work, I teach the brains of 3-year-olds all the way up to 18 years and older how to play the violin. I teach their brains, not their hands, because it is the brain that controls how the hands move. And if I ask one of my students who is sleep deprived to engage in the deep practice that makes them the talented students that they are, I can tell that they are tired because he or she is not engaged, and hence we end up with an unproductive and unsuccessful lesson. And if this happens in my lesson, I know it happens in the practice room at home. I read the reports and I was very intrigued and informed about my decision tonight. Again, this is not about me and how I too will be affected by the change. It is about a small change that needs to happen for our advancement in our society, which begins with our children, our teenagers. Thank you, and I hope that you vote yes.
Thank you. Daniela, your address for the record, please? Your street address.
I'm sorry?
Your
5 Lower Rocks Lane, Norwalk.
Drew Patrick, announce your name and address for the record.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Drew Patrick. I live at 8 Cricklewood Lane. I'm the father of a 5th grader at Columbus and a 7th grader at Rhoton. I too am in support of the change to later start times, but most importantly, I want to thank the board and the community, and especially the committee, the start time committee, for really thoughtful work that models the kind of engagement that I think that we really need in this community and all communities. I do have a difficult time rousting my 7th grader from bed in the morning, and can only imagine that's going to get worse as she advances into adolescence. But I'm also a public school educator myself, and am grappling with this issue in my own professional work, and applaud Norwalk for, along with other communities nearby, for taking this step. The report, I encourage everybody to read the report. It's thoughtful, it's purposeful. It had a clear objective to accomplish, to study this issue, and by engaging not just students and parents in this discussion, but by engaging mental health professionals and other health professionals in the process, I think the outcome, the produced report, really describes a thoughtful approach, a purposeful change. It's not going to be perfect, and it's certainly not going to make everybody happy, but it demonstrates the kind of engagement that I think produces our best work as a community. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Drew. Next is Donna Gilchrist. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Donna Gilchrist. I live at 40 Eagle Road. I am the parent of a 6th and 8th grader at Columbus Magnet School. So I first read about the benefits of a later high school start time about 20 years ago, long before I had kids of my own. This is not a new concept, nor is it just the latest feel-good craze. In fact, it is long overdue. There are decades of research proving the benefits of high school starting at 8:30 a.m. or later. I have listened to all of the arguments against this change, but I have not heard one that challenges or even directly addresses its many benefits. Instead, I have heard arguments such as teenagers will just stay up later, or minority students will suffer. Arguments that have already been refuted by scientific evidence, making it clear that most people have not even bothered to read the committee's report. There's also the argument, we all did it and survived. Well, a lot of us grew up without seatbelts too, and I haven't heard anyone advocating against them. However, the most common argument against this change is scheduling concerns. Opponents claim that it will have far-reaching and unintended consequences if everyone is forced to adjust their lives to a later start time. But the reality is, parents have already been adjusting their lives and schedules for years. First, when they had kids. Next, when their kids started elementary school. Then when they started middle school, and again when they started high school. Parents make changes every summer when there is no school, and at the beginning of every new sports season or activity. These changes are not unique to one or two families. Every single parent makes them on a regular basis. And not once have any of them caused a catastrophe, so there is no reason to expect this change would, as some would have you believe. We follow the advice of physicians every day when it comes to our children's health. We vaccinate against diseases, limit screen time, and promote exercise. Now, the American Academy of Pediatrics, along with all of our local pediatricians, is recommending the change to a later high school start time, and some are balking. It puzzles me that so many people are so willing to ignore this advice in favor of convenience, especially when it is so clearly in our children's best interest. The bottom line is, people don't like change. Good or bad, they want the comfort of the familiar, and that is not a good enough reason to keep the status quo. When it's all boiled down, all of these arguments amount to, I don't care how good it is for the children, it's an inconvenience to me.
30 seconds.
Our kids deserve better than that, and we will be doing them a great disservice by not implementing a later start time. I implore you, please defer to the science. It is overwhelmingly clear on this subject.
Thank you. Leah Reeves. Three minutes, Lee. Please state your name and address for the record.
Leah Reeves, 51 Winding Lane. I'm here to ask the board to vote no to the current plan for the start time in order to have more time to ensure the recommendation report you are voting on is accurate, because it's not, and that you better understand the busing situation, and have the same science recommendations to support the elementary school hours that you have for the high school. Let me be clear, I'm not disagreeing with the science or the need to have to do something for the high school, but the current plan is not clear and has left the elementary schools as an afterthought. We also shouldn't be spending $500,000 on buses until we know where we're getting the funds to pay for the increased enrollment. You are voting on a recommendation report, not what you are being told. Make sure it's accurate before you vote on it. Dr. Adamowski's email to me stated that the Tier 3 elementary schools would be dismissed at 3:40 next year, and that all kids would be home by 4 p.m., and that there would be more buses to accommodate the elementary schools. This isn't what the report states. The report states that Tier 3 elementary schools will dismiss at 3:50, not 3:40. The report also states that all schools have reduced buses in the afternoon. Let me repeat that. All schools have reduced buses in the afternoon. That's what the report says on page 23. Please check it. I suggest each Board of Ed member ride the bus in the afternoon and see what these kids deal with on a day-to-day basis. Most importantly, there's been no science used in the decision to have the elementary schools start so late. There isn't a letter with 16 pediatricians recommending that kids should be getting home at 4:45, because that's what's going to happen. We are just beginning to see the effects of a later dismissal time from last year. 3:40 is already too late. Yesterday, my son said again, "Mommy, I'm just too tired to read today." Homework will be useless, as they already can't focus on it now when they get home. All of the other towns who have implemented later high school start times have their elementary schools start between 8:15 and 8:45, and all the kids are home before 3:30. Let's be clear, it's not really a 10-minute change, because the time was just pushed from 3:25 to 3:40. It's really a push of 25 minutes. 25 minutes is the difference between getting home in the dark and getting home in the light. 25 minutes is the difference between being able to play sports at night or not, or play sports in the dark. What happens when children don't get outside and run around? Less ability to pay attention in class, increased behavioral issues, and this will further affect instructional time in school. If we can't do it right, don't do it at all. Please vote no tonight until you have a better plan in place to vote yes to. Make sure it's accurate. Thank you.
Thank you. Lissa Olivieri. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Lissa Donohue Olivieri. I'm at 30 Highbrook Road in Norwalk. So I work as a licensed professional counselor and a licensed addiction counselor. About half of the people that I work with are teenagers, and for the most part, they're dealing with anxiety and depression. I've definitely observed in my work with them that sleep plays a significant role in their mood and their anxiety. And as parents, you know that if your kid has got to sleep in on a Saturday, they're probably going to be in a better space. And we see this, over the summer as well. Mood and anxiety symptoms go away. So we know that our kids are definitely struggling if they're not getting enough sleep. And particularly with teenagers, we see more mental health issues and sometimes worse decision making. And a lot of the teens that I've worked with are not being lazy. They're not slackers, as I think, I've seen some of the Facebook comments. A lot of them are, engaged in a lot of extracurriculars. They're taking a lot of AP courses. They're working really, really hard. And when they're able to get enough sleep, they're much more able to succeed. I work part-time in Newtown, and this is where I work with a lot of teenagers. They did a change in school start times in the last a year or two ago. I'm not 100% sure. And everybody that I speak to there has really positive things to say. They do say that it was a difficult change at first, but things have improved for everybody across the board. One of the concerns, particularly is after-school sports. The solution that they have implemented is that if a student has, say, a game or something that they have to get to, they get a note and they leave their last period a little bit early, and that seems to have worked out really well. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Megan Hopkins.
Good evening. I'm Megan Hopkins. I live at 1 McAllister Avenue in Norwalk. I'm the parent of an 8th grader and a 6th grader at Roten Middle School. I believe that a later high school start time is the right thing to do for the health and success of our students. Last week, I sat in the back of this room and listened to the concerns, real and valid concerns raised by parents, students, and teachers. My position in support of a later start time does not ignore those concerns. But I believe that as parents, administrators, teachers, leaders, we must listen to and incorporate those concerns into a practical implementation plan for the district. Author and leadership guru Robin Sharma wrote, "All change is hard at first, messy in the middle, but so gorgeous at the end." As with other innovations the district has implemented, like Common Core Math, the middle school redesign, for example, this change will be most hard for those currently in the middle of it, those currently in high school, the students and families that will have to adapt their routines and coverage plans to align with the new schedule. This is the hard part of the change. For those of us with children in 8th grade and under, the new schedule will be all that we know, and when our kids get to 9th grade, we'll build our new routines around the new schedule just as we would have with the current high school schedule. Next comes the messy middle, and this is where I have significant concerns. We aren't great implementers in Norwalk. Can our district build out the infrastructure that it needs to make this a smooth implementation? We need busing, before and after programming, traffic studies, which I was happy to hear you started, Dr. Kimmel. We need partnerships with local businesses to make sure there are employment opportunities. And my question to you is, can you do this all before August? And if you vote to implement this for next year, you have to be 100% committed to working all of this out and be honest with yourselves and with your constituents if it needs to be delayed. In the end, the gorgeous result of all of this change can be healthier, safer, and more successful students, but we need to have a practical and realistic plan to make sure we can get through all of this successfully. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Smith. Mary Smith. Okay. Marge Madden.
Hi, my name is Marjorie Madden. I live on Silvermine Avenue. My nephew goes to Wilton High School. The later start time, it's a nightmare. Because my sister, well, she has to work. Is he up? Has he left for the bus? Multiple calls and texts to a teenager whose cell phone is on silent, as are most teenagers. He is not benefiting from increased sleep. Kids stay up late, it's a fact. The only thing that can change that is the parents. We cannot legislate students getting more sleep. And for us to think that is ludicrous. People are bantering around $457,000 as though it's an insignificant amount of money. How dare we? That's a lot of money for buses. In a town with mostly working class people, I just can't see the rationale, given that we have 150 to potentially 400 additional students and no money for them, and we're talking about spending $457,000 so the children can possibly sleep an hour late, and we think we're legislating this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is David Havelman.
Hi, I'm David Huvelman. I live at 10 Buckingham Place. Chairman Barbas, Dr. Adamowski, Mayor Rilling, thank you. Board of Ed, thank you for having us here tonight to speak. And thank you to the committee, who I think there are some members here, who worked on this proposal. I'm here to speak in the affirmative for this. I want you to vote for this proposal. I think it's smart for our children. It's smart for the science. I was very impressed when I read the proposal because of the amount of background material that was put into it. What amazed me was about a year ago, I remember the beginnings of the conversation about making this move, and I remember in January, suddenly there was a committee, and the committee was going to start meeting, and I was on the SGC of my son's school at that time, and I remember we were concerned that elementary wasn't being represented properly, and we voiced those concerns, and you listened, and that was a good thing. And what I then saw was that the rollout for the 1920, you backed off on that. And I think those were really positive things moving this forward. It gave you time to create the proposal that was put out. It gave you time to let us do the research that we needed to do if we did it. And I started noodling around on Google constantly. And what I found was that it's a smart move. Is it all absolutely perfect? No, of course not. Compromise is a part of how we have to do things, and that's a reality. But I urge you tonight to vote in the affirmative for this, to start moving this forward. By delaying the vote for this to this time of the year, you've now given us a whole year to get ahead of this before August, before it needs to be implemented, to look at the traffic studies, to look at any possibilities that may come up that would alter time slightly as you move forward in the implementation. So I thank you for the work that you've done. I thank the committee for the work that they've done. And I urge you to please vote yes. One other thing, in the source material, one of the things that struck me most was the RAND report, where it talked about the economics of this for kids. That was impressive to me, the math, looking at a student who gets better sleep, better grades, and how much money he can make down the road because of that, and laid out in a math, and I love math, and so there you go. Anyway, I urge you to vote yes tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas Bartek. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Thomas Bartek, 28 Riverview Drive. You can start your clock in about 30 seconds. What I'm going to ask from everybody from this board is, first of all, I want to thank you for the time you put into this. This is something that means a great deal to the community and for our children. But what I'd like to ask of you before we get started is, when we conduct a classroom, what do we ask of our students? To look at the teacher, to pay attention to what they're saying so they can learn. I've sat over here and listened to about 12 or 14 people speak, and we're eating potato chips, staring at our computer screen, and doing anything but looking at the people that are speaking to you. You've said to us that the decision has not been made. Okay, it hasn't been made. But people have come out this evening to speak about what we feel and what we need you to hear. And I'd like you to look at us to hear what we have to say.
Taking notes.
I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
I'm typing notes.
Okay? All right. So to that, number one, as I said before, this is
seeing
not
you
a
straight
difficult
from work.
situation. I beg your pardon?
I came here straight from work, so sorry I'm eating, but
Okay, but
I'm
this is
working
our
for
time.
free.
And I'm here for free as well. Okay, so what I'm going to say is that I appreciate the science, I appreciate what's been done, I appreciate the time everybody's taken. And I don't disagree that the change of a start time is a bad thing. In reading the report, I see, and from listening to the opening statements, 4 years have been put into this situation. But I've also heard as a community member here and talking to other parents that there are difficult situations that have not been listened to or have been evolved. There are other school districts that have been implemented this, have had more problems. I guess I'm asking more of a question. Have we listened to those schools? Have we gone through what their problems are and figured out how we can not have that be a problem in Norwalk? What is the committee going to do as we come up with these problems? And I understand, you can't be making decisions based on one person's situation. But as far as after-school situations, as far as single working parents, some of our children do have to work to help support their families and their homes. I'd like to know that that has been taken into consideration because you do have to look at the greater picture. This is going to happen. This will be implemented next year. And I hope it is successful and I hope it benefits everybody. But I just, again, I'm asking not to speak against or affirmative things, but ask the committee to please be open-minded and be wary of those situations that come about when trouble begins, and not just say it's the science, it's what it is, and it's only a couple people, but really pay attention to our students and the things that are going to be going on with them.
30 seconds,
to
please.
make sure that we attend to their needs, because they're the ones that we're supposed to be here working for. All right? I thank you for your time.
Well, thank you. Next is Lissa Arnold. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lissa Arnold, 11 Clinton Avenue. I am a parent of a junior at McMahon High School. I had a senior who graduated this past June, and I am against the later start time. There's a couple of reasons why I am. My 16-year-old has special education. He is ADHD. So for the most part, he pretty much can get himself up on time. But as a working parent, I would have to worry about whether he got up, got something to eat instead of just rushing out of the house. I've been in the situation when they were younger where they had to take the bus because I had to be at work before they went to middle school or elementary school. And my kids stood in the cold for 45 minutes just to tell me that they're going back home because the bus never came. In recent years, last year, they took away a bus stop on Clinton and they combined the two buses so that there were 4 kids to a seat and there were kids standing on the bus. So it just makes me think as a parent now, I have a high schooler, I had 2 high schoolers that I could take to school before I had to go to work. I had peace of mind. My older one was also special education. He had LD, he had executive functioning issues, sensory issues. So knowing what he had to do or not do gave him anxiety. So as a parent, it would give me anxiety to know that my child was going to school or not going to school. And as a parent, I always made sure that I followed up with what my kids did through a text. Did you get to school? Are you on the bus? I was one of those parents at McMahon last spring, who was in the input for the later start times. We all sat around, got in groups, had our opinions, our thoughts. Dr. Costanzo stood up, and we were all there to think that we had an input on the later start times, that the decision wasn't made, that it was going to be implemented possibly in 2021 to
30
find
seconds.
out that the decision was made. That was Dr. Costanzo's quote. The decision has been made. The later start time is going to be implemented in 2021. So whatever the outcome is, I just hope that you really think about what it's going to be. It's not all about the science, and it's not all about the higher SAT scores. It's really about our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Suzanne Bartek. Name and address for the record, please.
Hello. Suzanne Bartek, 28 Riverview Drive. I spoke last week as well, as I'm sure you remember. And there was something I did want to add to this, and it's been said before. I do respect the research, and I'm not saying I disagree with it. I don't support the start time, but I'm the unique one that has the child in P-Tech and does marching band, the school play, winter percussion, several projects related to P-Tech as well. So this change could be detrimental to her incorporating everything. Again, my biggest concern stems from the implementation phase. I don't understand beyond the bus renegotiation why we're rushing to have this implemented next fall. Again, I'm not discounting any of the science or the research. I'm sure it's accurate, but this is a huge community. We even said 3,800 students, so that's a lot of impact, a lot of families. I'm another working mom, and it's kind of nice to be able to drive my daughter to the bus stop, because, I mean, a 15-minute walk wouldn't kill her, but it's kind of great us time, and that would go right down the tubes. And again, I'm another mom that I'd worry, did she make it to the bus? And if not, how does she get to school? She will be able to drive eventually, but at this point she can't. I just don't necessarily feel that that's going to be good with some of the high schoolers. It might be more, you might see more kids skipping school or not going to school, which could be contraindicated. Anyway, like I said, for the whole P-Tech thing, I know they said, well, they can take classes at 4 o'clock or whatever, which sounds, oh, that's fantastic, except she'd end up having to miss marching band, which is the world, so she'll end up dropping out of the NCC component, because marching band and all her music is everything she really stands for. And I know there's plenty of other students that have mentioned, their athletics, or they're having to work after school, and many other things that equally should be weighed. And I feel the rush to implement this could be disastrous to our community, and I hope you guys will take that into consideration. So, thank you.
Thank you. Sue Remsen.
Good evening. My name is Sue Remsen. I live at 18 Tanglewood Lane in Norwalk. I had a whole big long thing prepared that I wanted to read, but most people have said everything that I've kind of felt. My biggest reason for speaking tonight is I 100% agree high schoolers need more sleep. They have needed more sleep ever since I've known them for, I've been teaching 28 years in the district, and yes, I agree with that. My problem is the process of how this all came about. For some reason, teachers were excluded from even being part of the decision-making, and I think you would have had a lot more buy-in had you included more teachers. The committee was handpicked, and it's just really disheartening as a teacher to not be included in any of those kind of decision-making things, as well as a parent. When you went to the focus groups, it wasn't, do you think this is a good idea or not? It was, this is what we're doing. And it's frustrating. I just hope going forward that there's more transparency in decisions, and that our our depth of knowledge of working with students gets considered when making decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Sean Ireland.
Hi, Sean Ireland, 19 Willow Street, Norwalk, Connecticut. Believe it or not, I'm kind of on the fence like you guys. I think there's some valid points for it, but I also think there's some valid points against it too. Norwalk High already has a thing in session called Open Beginning, and I just want to know, did we look at those students' numbers? Has their sleep time increased? Are their test scores higher? Is their attendance better? And the answer might be yes, it might be no. I just want to know if we looked at that, and I don't know if Brian McMahon has it. I teach at Norwalk High, I coach at Norwalk High, and my son goes to Merrimack. So I just want to know, do we can already use the numbers right here within our district. We have a big population that already has an extended school time, sleep time. And I know we're all tired now, and I get it, but just so you know, like, if this times go as they are scheduled to, Norwalk High's second time would have ended 9 minutes ago. So we would have kids leaving their house 7:30 in the morning, and by my watch, getting home about 8:15. And my students, I coach football, a lot of my kids, they don't have the means to get home. They can't get in a car, they have to take the Wheels bus. I think the Wheels bus stops running at 7 o'clock. So how are my 12 to 14 kids who take the Wheels bus home, how are they going to get home? Do I tell them not to come to practice when it's the 5:45 to 7:45 slot? These are just things that I'm coming up with. And I'm very happy you brought up how Wilton High School did, because our districts are very similar. They have 19,000 people down. We have almost 100. They have just as many working kids in the town like we do. So I'm very happy that was brought up too. And then what happens 2 years from now if the attendance stays the same, the scores don't improve? Do we go back to what we did? Do we keep it the same, spending almost $500,000 a year? Or what's the plan if the scores do not improve? Attendance does not improve. What's the action if that happens? And then at high school, we're always taught, get them ready for college, get them ready for their career. My college classes start at 7:30, 7:45. My summer job starts at 7 o'clock.
30 seconds, please.
So how are we telling them, get ready for college, get ready for your career, but you know what? You guys can sleep in an extra hour late. It has nothing to do with inconvenience. It's the real world. Okay, we have to get up early for work. We have to get up early for college, for school, for things. We have to do it. Thank you for your time, and I do appreciate everything you guys do. I really, truly do. I know it's a thankless job, and I know you guys put in hours and hours, and I do appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And go Bears. Next is Mary Jordan.
Good evening. I'm not speaking about school start time. We did address the board on previous occasions. On the other hand, I was able to hear Helene Becker present about the needs of the buildings related to the influx of students, and we wanted to make a statement about that. As Norwalk public school teachers, it is both our honor and our serious trust to educate all Norwalk students. And we, actually, there was a request to hear from teachers. The teachers are facing enormous stress in all of our schools due to an influx of students and other reasons. School counselors are facing a shift in their workload already. They are not having anything removed from their workloads, but they are being asked to take on additional counseling responsibilities, as well as deal with the new responsibilities of the redesign. The rush to implement has not given the chance to make decisions about how to reallocate responsibilities in advance. We're very concerned about the heavy workload. We have been working, the NFT, teachers generally, have been working with the district to make adjustments to caseloads, to make adjustments to school classroom maximum sizes, including extending our maximum loads on a temporary basis due to the scheduling snafus, due to the influx of students, due to many reasons in different buildings. There remains a deep concern about the high needs of our students, about the large class sizes, about increased graduation requirements, other things that you mentioned, Dr. Kimmel, that other members of the curriculum committee mentioned earlier this evening. I support the plans to increase staffing levels for school counselors, for ELL specialists, for classroom teachers to take on caseloads. We need more teachers. We need more support staff to support these high-need students and to support teachers to do the work that they are trained to do. We have a temporary situation, and we have long-term needs as well. And I appreciate the very thoughtful presentation that Ms. Becker gave earlier today that included the voices of elementary, middle school, high school, special ed, ELL, regular classroom, and other types of teachers. We're all impacted by this. We're all standing by, but we do need additional staffing.
30
Thank
seconds,
you.
please. Thank you, Mary. Joe Gianturco.
Good evening, Joe Gianderco, 9 Mott Avenue. I'm here to advocate on behalf of the teachers of Norwalk and their students. The proposal to change the high school start time does not fit the needs of our greater community. As speakers at previous meetings have pointed out, parents have also pointed out on Facebook, and students have come to this microphone and pointed out, this simply does not fit. Students have voiced their concerns about lost wages, impacts to their family time, and possible economic status. Parents and taxpayers have voiced concern over the cost of busing, and teachers have voiced their concerns about safety and lost instructional time. At this point, with over a year of planning, the teachers and various other professionals of the Norwalk Public School System were never invited to or provided the opportunity to input or provide feedback. Now you can't get mad at me, I got something. So you have to listen. The community has spoken, and this plan in its current format simply does not match the needs of Norwalk or the children it serves. I ask that you vote no for this proposal until all stakeholders have an opportunity to provide input. The students themselves, along with teachers, must be involved in the creation of a new proposal. The NFT and its members are not an impediment to the progress. We are here to support our students and our members. We believe that if we can work together, our students will thrive, our successes will increase, and Norwalk will continue to become the most successful urban district in the state. I simply ask that you partner with the NFT to create better outcomes for our students. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe, and thanks, Emily. Are there any other members of the public who wish to address the board? We have one. Hi, Lisa. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Lisa Britton, 24 Highland Avenue. I want to thank the committee and everybody who's done all the study with regard to the later start time for high school kids. And I don't think anybody in the room disputes the science. I think one of the things that would probably be good for students' health is to put down this thing. I think the concern is we delay the start time, the kids are still going to just stay up as late as, or stay up an hour later, and we heard that last week. The concern I have is that when we do these things, there is a $500,000 price tag on this, and we do have a lot more students coming into the school district. And as we look at our city, more of one thing means less of another. Over the last 6 years, our school budget has grown by about $40 million. By the same token, things like our roads and our sidewalks and our sewer systems have not been funded. And like I said, economics is more of one thing means less of another. And so where you have a situation where staff are concerned and it's kind of a split decision, I am worried about timing and implementation. We just kind of implemented a new parking plan down on Wall Street, and we're kind of backing off of that. So don't dispute the science, concerned about implementation, concerned about the budget. concerned about timing. And that's all I want to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa. One more member of the public, at least. Please state your name and address for the record.
So good evening, my name is Jenny Reyes and I live in 1 Pop Street. So I will just say briefly my day every day. So my daughter, I have a elementary school, Naramek, Nathan Hill, and Norwalk High. So I'm stopping the 3 different places. So personal relation, my daughter take from the high school, take biblical classes before high school. So she start every day 5 a.m. She going to New Canada to take the biblical class, and she's free 7, and I'm running the New Canada to Norwalk High, and she is in class on time. She have a schedule. After school, she's doing volleyball now. So when finish volleyball, she's going to do track. So if the new change coming, she will be not able to take another sport class. She will be not able. And we just came from the game that she had in the high school. So it will be hard for me driving and another different schedule because plus I work 4 hours. When I left my kids, I was so happy with the new change that we just having with the 20 more minutes that the elementary kids have, because I left high school, then go back to home to pick my 2 another kids. Another year, my another daughter is going to high school too, so I will be next year high school and Naramek. So in the times running back and forth, it will be crazy for me. So I'm concerned about it. The other thing is, if the kids don't go sleep, pretty much every day I'm going home with games 8 o'clock. But we finished early the game today because one day is big time and another day no. So I'm around home 7:30 every day with the sport. So if the parents, we do a schedule with the kids, they don't sleep because they have electronics. Take away the electronics. We are the parents. They are the high schooler, but we are the parents. Make the schedule. If they have to wake up early,
please.
Go early to the bed. So it's our responsibility like parents. But I think I'm not happy with the new change. Thank you, and thanks for all the effort that you made. Thanks.
Thank you. There's one more. Please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Sorry, I just got back from work, so if anything I say repeated, my bad. Hi, my name is Mary Smith. I live at 9 Hillwood Place. And really, all I want to say is nothing good comes from doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. I'm very happy that we are trying new things. The only way that our kids are going to learn different is if we give them a chance with something different. If we keep asking them to do the same thing, be sleep deprived, not being able to do things, then nothing is going to change. Their scores won't change, their physical health won't change. So I'm hopeful that this will give them a better start. And I feel as a parent, when I had my children, my schedule completely changed. I'm pretty sure all of us that have kids feel the same thing. When I had a baby, what my schedule was is no longer. When my kids went to grade school, what my schedule was no longer. When I had one in kindergarten, one in preschool, schedule changed. What did I do? I changed my schedule and I made it work. So I just really think we can do it. It might be uncomfortable, it might not be easy, but that doesn't mean it's not right to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? Please step forward and state your name for the record and address.
Lorena Davison, 6 Candlewood Lane. I'm here, just came from a relay graduate class here in the building, so thank you Norwalk Public Schools for supporting me to become an elementary school teacher. So anyway, just quickly from what I've seen as a volunteer, former PTO president, now a parent of 3 Norwalk school students, a high schooler at Brian McMahon, a middle schooler at West Rocks, and an elementary 5th grade student at Silvermine Elementary School. I do see that sleep will help our kids. And I do see that even though this change will be totally inconvenient for my family, I'm willing to take on the inconvenience to help all our students. I do see that cognition will be helped with extra sleep. I have a teenager that this morning I had to, fortunately I could drive him to school, but he slept in and he missed the bus. But we have disadvantaged students, economically disadvantaged students, academically disadvantaged students. We have a lot of immigrants coming in, and I believe that this extra time of sleep will help all their skills. So for example, kids that are coming in that need to learn English, memory and cognition will improve. They'll learn English faster and they'll catch up with their English-speaking peers. So even though this seems inconvenient, it's going to pay dividends. Also, teens, this is the most vulnerable time in life for an individual when even the best kids make terrible choices that have dire consequences. I can't remember exactly the name of this researcher from Rutgers University, but he has some, it's Semenza is the last name, Semenza, and he has done some research with the correlation of health and criminality. So students that are teens tend to be more irritable because of all their changes, right? So the kids that are already at risk with being sleep deprived, they have less control of their emotions, and this is a pipeline to prison. We can't, we just can't let these kids go to prison. We need to give them a better path, to give them a little bit more equity. And this equity is also for our academically disadvantaged kids.
30 seconds, please.
And to our economically disadvantaged kids who cannot afford tutoring rates from Fairfield County. They just cannot afford to pay $50 to $100 an hour for math. And we need to improve math scores. So missing instructional time is not an option for Norwalk. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who wish to address the board? Please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Tracy Smith, 24 Woodbury Avenue, Norwalk, Connecticut. I wasn't going to speak at first because I have a disability and it causes me to be a little bit nervous, but I feel the need to speak because I've heard all of the conversation and I've always been a person that's been open-minded and try to listen to everyone and get everyone's viewpoint. But I just feel that tonight the representation for the low-income families are not being represented here this evening. So I'm here to speak and for the low income because I am one of them. Has anyone thought about when a senior or something has to get their sibling off the bus, and that now that the high schoolers and the elementary schools are going to run pretty much concurrent and them coming home together, what happens when that kindergartner sibling is not at that bus stop to get them? And the parent is at work expecting that that sibling is going to be there to pick them up. And then now that kindergarten is now sent back. So now the parent is stuck at work. The kindergarten is crying because they're on the bus, no one's there to go get them. Are we thinking about the elementary school children? I hear a lot of people speaking about the effects of the high schoolers, and I get it, don't get me wrong. I have 5 children, 4 of them that have gone through this system, 1 of them that is currently in Brian McMahon in junior. But I also have 3 grandchildren that are going to come through the system. So I have to think about those as well, because I know when I was bringing up my children, I didn't have that option, and I hear this being said that, oh, we adjust. I worked for Neon Head Start program. I was not able to change or adjust because I was taking care of a lot of the children. So when my boss said that you report to work at 7:30, I either report to work at 7:30 or I didn't have a job. Some of our parents are here and they are not legally in this country. When their boss tells them that they have to be on the job at 7 o'clock, their option is they're at that job at 7 o'clock or they don't have an employment. So, yes, we made the decision to have these children. I think a lot of you guys know my children. I did a darn good job with my children, and I'm doing a good job even with my disability. But
30 seconds.
we need to take into consideration, and like I heard someone make mention of that, did we edge out all of that? Did we think about that? Is that a cost to you when children are being brought back because the kindergarten's parents, or not parents, siblings aren't there? Is that an added cost? And not just the cost of dollar signs, what is the cost to a 5-year-old that is constantly being brought back? Thank you and have a good night.
We have one more.
We need to get this meeting going.
Good evening. Olga Zargos-Traub, 38 Devil's Garden Road. I'm just going to say thank you. Thank you. I know many of you personally. I know many of your children. Thank you, Dr. Adamowski. Your final year, and you're still embracing a difficult issue. You're not just laying down. You're taking this challenge on. Many people have difficult situations. Many people need to adapt. It's going to be difficult. We know that your children are important to you. We know that our children are important to you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be sitting here for hours on end dealing with these difficult issues. With regard to transparency, over the last 5 years, we have had so much transparency. We appreciate that. I know it may not seem like it from many people's perspectives. We thank you for the opportunities on Facebook to express our views, which we never had. We have a 3,200 Facebook page following, which a lot of our issues get addressed. Thank you for that. And this will be difficult. I am in support of it, but I understand the people's issues. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? Seeing none, public comments are closed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. We will be going into the superintendent's report shortly.
Mr. Barbas,
Yes.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Do you mind if I just make one brief comment about
Sure.
this? Okay. Just briefly, I want to first of all thank everybody for making comments tonight. I know it was difficult to come up here, so whether you're for or against that, we really do appreciate that. Also for the gentleman that spoke earlier about having the eye contact and being present and watching. If any of you were to come back here, you would see lots of notes. You would see some members looking on their iPad that Newark Public Schools gave to us to look at any of our agenda items. Somebody might be eating an energy bar to keep up their energy. Somebody might have soda. I mean, there might be reasons for that, but if you look here, we're all dedicated, we're engaged, and we anticipate and welcome your comments every time that you're here. So we have a board here that's very cohesive and wants to be here for students, staff, as well as the public. So I just wanted to mention that. In addition to that, I was a member, and still, it's no longer a member now, but part of the Delayed Start Time Committee. And originally, like Mr. Barbas had mentioned, we were thought about having it earlier, and many of us thought, you know what, we need to do our due diligence. We need another year to really sort this out, vet this. get more members part of the committee, a broad representation of elementary, middle, and high school as well. I started my journey, this has been a topic for me for many years, but back in April of 2017, I spoke to Dr. Adamowski. There was a conference in DC. I took my own time. I took time off work unpaid, went out to Washington for several days, and listened to experts in the field, physicians, educators, children, students, physicians, nurses, paraprofessionals. We knew that this was going to be a tough journey, and that was 2 years ago. And at that point, there were many, many districts that were going for that, and there was some pushback. Change, we know, is hard, so I wanted to get that out here. And I think the number one reason or compelling takeaway for me was the health of our students. So again, thank you tonight for coming tonight and expressing your opinion and your thoughts. Thank you, Mr. Barbas.
You're welcome. As I said, we will be going to superintendent's report, but before we go to superintendent's report, I needed to make another statement and then allow one of our board members to speak for a second. But this will be the last board meeting before the election on November 5th. There are 9 members of the Board of Education, 5 represent districts, 4 at large, and our terms are staggered. The 5 district representatives are up for re-election on November 5. And this old board will actually meet on November 12th, and then on November 19th, the new board will be sworn in. We're going to lose 3 board members who chose not to run again. So we are going to need to say goodbye to Julie Corbett, Eric Anderson, who's not here tonight, and Mike Lyons. We need to thank Julie for that. We need to thank Julie for stepping up 2 years ago to fill an open spot following the resignation of a board member and serving these last 2 years. She's brought a lot to the table. We have to thank Eric Anderson, who rose to the occasion, fought a tough primary to win a seat on the board, and was a decisive member on every key vote this board has faced over the last 4 years. And last of all, we have Mike Lyons. Mike Lyons and I were both elected in 2011. He was elected to represent East Norwalk, which is known as District C. I was elected to represent the west side of town, which runs from Rowayton up to West Norwalk. Mike won by 140 votes out of almost 3,000 votes cast. I won by 3 votes out of almost 3,400 votes cast.
Yeah.
Less than a year after we were elected, we were just kind of getting up to speed, Superintendent Marks quit. And shortly thereafter, in a completely unexpected set of circumstances, which makes for a very fascinating story, Mike Lyons was elected chair of the board, even though he's a Republican and the Republicans were in a minority on the board. He was re-elected chair 4 more times. Mike L, was just what we sometimes call him to distinguish him from Mike B, oversaw the superintendent search that brought Manny Rivera to us. And he was also the chair when Manny Rivera, unfortunately, 18 months later, decided to resign. And then Mike L stood up again and oversaw the search as chair of the next superintendent search, which brought us Dr. Adamowski. And over this entire period, Mike L oversaw many critical votes, including that of the strategic operating plan I referred to earlier. And that in combination with Dr. Adamowski's hire, which was a 5-4 vote, as well as the construction and then implementation of the strategic construction, the facilities construction plan, that all happened on his watch. His imprint on Norwalk Public Schools has been very deep and has righted so many of the issues that were plaguing our school district for many years: the dysfunction, the disorganization, the lack of accountability. Where we are today, which many people got up today to thank, is thanks to him and his leadership and his commitment to this district. He will be impossible to replace, and he will be sorely missed by those of us who have been on this journey. And so I want to thank him, and he'd like to make some comments, parting comments, so I will turn the floor over to him.
Thank you. This is my last meeting after 8 years here, following 6 years on the Board of Estimates, so 14 consecutive years in government office here. And I appreciate the opportunity to say a few things, since this will be my last meeting, since I won't be at the meeting on the 12th. I wanted to hold up a couple of things. Here's a headline: City students outperform peers. NPS scores top marks in Next Gen again. Here's the top 10 largest cities in the state of Connecticut. The one that ranks highest in student achievement is Norwalk. Here's an interesting number that shows Norwalk also outperforming state performance averages, which is something that never happened before. And interestingly, doing it at $17,589 per student versus $18,873 in Stanford, which outspends us, and yet our students are doing better. This is a recent one. Norwalk touts academic success in 2019 grads, college acceptances. 97% of our high school graduates are going to college or universities. We have 4 schools of distinction under the state now. Even in the area of special education, which we know is a tremendous problem for us, and we've devoted millions of dollars to addressing, the latest state analysis here, we moved from needs assistance to meets requirements for special education as a result of the big special education program that we ran. This is real, even astonishing progress, particularly for a school system with as many impacted students as we have. We have over 50% of our student body now is on free and reduced lunches. Most school systems that see rapid increases in challenged or impacted students see their scores and performance ratios go down. Ours have gone up as the impacts on the student body have increased. A lot of people work together to make this happen, particularly the teachers at the front lines at our schools carrying out these policies. But the reality is that Norwalk had good teachers all through the preceding 25 years of stasis when nothing happened, where the achievement gaps weren't closed, when we didn't exceed state averages, when we didn't reach the position of number 1 of 10 urban school districts. To make that kind of thing happen, a school system needs strong leadership from the top. And that means the board and the superintendent. And so these things, all these headlines and articles and numbers, this did not happen by accident. During the last 2 years, we have had, to borrow a term from history, an era of good feeling on this board. Even when we disagreed, we've done it collegially with very little of the rancor that was present during the first 6 years I was here. And for that collegiality, I want to thank all of my colleagues sitting up here with me right now. Even when we've disagreed, we've done it civilly, and we've managed to continue progress in the school system. But I also want to thank a hardy group of board members who over the preceding years managed to hold together a bipartisan 5-vote majority on this board, because without those people, none of this would have happened. And given the success that you can see in these numbers over the last 6 years, really starting when we hired Manny Rivera, that was when we really started to turn things around here. It may seem hard to believe it, but as Mike mentioned briefly, every major initiative that we've instituted has faced intense opposition, and most only passed this board with 5 votes out of 9. 5 votes approved the strategic operating plan, which is largely responsible for this. 5 votes approved the school building plan, which is building the new PONUS, has plans for new schools, is renovating most of the schools in the district. The K-5 literacy plan passed by 1 vote. The privatization plan for custodial services, which is saving us $1 million per year now without laying off a single employee, passed by 1 vote. Hiring Dr. Adamowski, in my opinion, the most successful superintendent in Norwalk's history, passed by 1 vote, 5-4. And the board members who passed those votes, without which we'd still be sitting, treading water, going nowhere, paid a heavy price for it. We were attacked constantly and sometimes personally. We had to fight off personal attacks, including false accusations of racism and even criminality, hostile media coverage, FOI complaints, labor board complaints, human rights complaints, and abusive lawsuits. This board in the last 6 years was not a place for the faint of heart. In every single complaint against us that went to a decision, we prevailed. Not once in the 8 years I've been on this board has any agency or court ruled against us on any issue that was filed against us. Not one. But being proven innocent of the charges doesn't make it easy to live with the constant accusations. Yet those 5 votes held firm, voted for all those strategic plans and superintendents, and the school system was turned around. So I want to thank, by name, the board members who I was proud to join with, who made this possible during those tough times, the crew that absorbed all the outrageous slings and arrows and kept pushing forward anyway. The core 3, who were always part of the bipartisan 5 the whole time from 2012 on, myself, Mike Barbas, and Heidi Keyes. We reached across the aisle, Republicans and Democrats, and started working together. And I was thinking about that in this era when Republicans and Democrats generally just shoot howitzers at each other instead of working together. And how do we make that happen? And my theory was that you have to do 2 things to actually work together. Number 1, you have to entertain the possibility that the person in the other party is not a monster. Just entertain the possibility they're not a monster. Then you can talk to them. And then the second thing that you do is you find common ground. Now, Bruce and I are not going to have, I'm sure, have probably never supported the same candidate for President of the United States. But it doesn't matter, because we agreed on improving curriculum and rationalizing a budget and building school buildings. And so there was no reason for partisan rancor there, and there wasn't. That group of 5, and it's really amazing that we were always able to hold 5, even with shifting memberships, originally included Jack Chiaramani and Sue Haney. When Sue departed, Artie Kasimis became the 5th. When Jack departed, Brian Meek became the 5th. And when Artie departed, Eric Anderson became the 5th. Take away any of them, and we don't have Stephen Adamowski, we don't have a strategic plan, we don't have a building plan or any of this. Somebody mentioned before that serving on the Board of Ed is the most thankless job in government, and I can absolutely testify. So I wanted to break that thankless tradition and thank these unpaid volunteers, Mike, Heidi, Sue, Jack, Artie, Brian, and Eric, for fighting the good fight and finishing the race. It has often been trying and difficult to serve on the board over these 8 years, but given these results, it's also been the most satisfying work I've done in Norwalk government. We have a lot to be proud of. So I leave you on the board. Many of you will continue. Some may or may not. My best wishes to the board, to the leaders of the school system, to the teachers, and high hopes for continued forward momentum and success for you and our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I think Heidi wanted to say a few
Yeah,
words. I'm not sure what you can say after something like that.
I can't top yours or Mike's, but I want to first of all talk to Julie, and then I want to address Mike. Thank you, Julie, for working with us in the past 2 years. Your patience, wisdom, and knowledge has served you well, especially on the policy committee, and you'll be sorely missed. So thank you. And as I was looking at you tonight, you're about to have your baby very, very soon, sooner than I thought. So congratulations to you. And you, Mike, you took the words out of my mouth about Eric, and we appreciate all that Eric has done and worked with us for many, many years on the board. One thing, Mike, that you had missed, and you said everything, it's hard to even top that, Mike L's memory.
Oh, God.
Your memory is just more than, I mean, I can ask you a question, and you'll know it from 8 years ago. So, I mean, you just know it like that. So we appreciate that. Your continued service on the board as chair has really been very, very impressive. You've worked tirelessly as the chair of negotiations and personnel. And also I wanted to mention you're commuting back and forth to Rhode Island. You were for many, many years. So you'd make a meeting and travel for many hours and make sure you were here always on time, if not early. And you've always been here for the right reasons. And the right reasons have really been our students and all of our stakeholders. Big question, though, for me, for you tonight is, what will you do the first and third Tuesday of every month? So will you
I'll probably be watching this on
That's
TV.
it, live stream. My notes, I think live stream. And the other part, and I thought this was interesting, 2 things I never really knew about you on a personal level. Your favorite soda is Dr. Pepper. And the funny story is tonight, actually before the meeting, I went to the staff room and got Mike a soda, and I never drink soda. I never use a soda machine. And so I pressed it for the first time in years, and what pops up? Ginger ale and Diet Coke. So I gave Mike Diet Coke, and I kept the ginger ale. And also an interesting tidbit about Mike is Mike likes scary movies. Who would have guessed?
And
Walking Dead.
Yes,
Oh,
so I
huge
thought,
Walking Dead fan.
I never knew that, so I thought it was almost like a roast tonight that we'd have, but it's kind of similar to that, but we appreciate everything that you've done over many, many years, the past 8 years, and I don't want to say retiring, because you're way too young to retire, but the first and the third Tuesday of every month, you'll be streaming and watching board meetings, so thank you. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Heidi, thank you. Oh, yes, Bruce?
Just 1 second.
The newbie.
All I can say is, who would have ever thought? I remember in the 1990s, writing a column about teacher salaries, refuting Mr. Lyons over here, or trying to refute him, okay, about how to read salary schedules. But more importantly, I think there's, what Mike said, something he did not emphasize, and I think it's probably one of the most important, if not most important thing to think about going forward. And it really was exemplified to me in an incident in a Stop and Shop when I was shopping. And I always talk to one of the guys who works in the produce department who follows Norwalk politics really closely. And I walk in, and he's smiling. He says, "Come here, I got to ask you a question." He says, "What's with Norwalk? We seem to be like from another planet. This is not how it's supposed to work. I can't believe it. We're doing everything right." And I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" And he says, "Well, you and Lyons on the same page. I mean, how on earth did that happen?" You know, and my answer was, well, it's the beauty of local politics. Right. And he smiled, and he said, he told me I was right. And but I think there's a real lesson to be learned on how to really get things done in a way that's healthy for the city and for everyone else. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody, for your comments. Mike will be sorely missed, and we're sorry you won't be here on the 12th, but we will be seeing you on October 23rd, where your service to Norwalk will be honored at an event that everyone's invited to at the Maritime Center, which Mike was a key vote, going once again to 5-4 votes, was a key vote, and the Maritime Center wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Mike's being on the council many, many years ago. And with all of that adulation, we will move on to the superintendent's report.
Well, I think under these circumstances, we should cancel the superintendent's report, adjourn the meeting, and end on a high note. You board members, I think, are generally aware of the initiation of something called Project Rise in the state of Connecticut. This is one of the initiatives of the Donohue Foundation and a key part of the large public-private partnership that our state has established. Project Rise is the mechanism for funding is directly to schools, so a district does not apply, a school can apply. And we were very fortunate due to the, and by the way, there is a good deal of criteria that assesses the school's capacity to do this. And we're very fortunate, and I think a tribute to Brian McMahon High School was their selection to participate in Project Rise this year. And here with us tonight, in addition to Ralph Valenzizi, is Jacqueline Ahrens, who has primary responsibility in this area, and Scott Hurwitz. We have two objectives for this brief 10-minute presentation. One is to let you know what Project Rise is and how it works and what our folks at Brian McMahon are attempting to accomplish through its use.
Thank you, Dr. Adamowski, and good evening, Board. We will keep this really brief tonight, but I did want to talk a little bit more about what the RISE network is. So back in 2015, a group of teachers and a group of administrators got together to co-found the RISE partnership with the Donohue Foundation in the effort to support every high school student graduate college and career ready. So today, RISE now represents partnerships between teachers, counselors, administrators, all working together across 10 high schools in 9 districts to promote college and career and life success for all. So they actually affect now over 14,000 students. So the RISE network itself, currently the first cohort that started back in 2015 and 16, consisted of 5 schools. And the 5 schools were Career High School in New Haven, East Hartford and Hartford High School in Hartford, Platt High School, and Maloney High School in Meriden. And in 2019, a second cohort was began with RISE. In that cohort, another 5 schools were added to the group. One being obviously Brian McMahon, Manchester High School, Middletown High School, Naugatuck High School, and West Hill High School in Stamford. So in a brief way to look at RISE's approach towards helping students become college and career ready and also successful, they really focus in 3 key areas. They look to make sure that students have the supports to be successful through a personalized learning approach. They look to make sure that educators actually have the data and the resources needed in order to change their practice. And they also make sure that they're part of a larger network so that they can then scale those opportunities and collaborate together in improving outcomes for all students. So I was going to talk a little bit about our history and how we kind of got to the point of working with RISE, but Mr. Lyons actually hit on a lot of these key points within the first paragraph of this slide. Over the last few years, we've really seen Norwalk Public Schools rise to a reputation of being a district with the potential to grow, and one thing we didn't mention was the idea of foundations and partners, public and private partnerships working together in a system. They felt strong in supporting us because they actually see that now our system actually has direction. And if given the right resources, we can make changes that we need to make for our students. McMahon is a perfect example of how this works. And I know Dr. Adamowski mentioned about applying to the RISE network. Actually, usually it's a RISE network that reaches out to the school systems too, to make sure that they're part of it. So it's a very rigorous process. And I know that Scott's going to talk a little bit more about this in just a moment. I'll turn it over to Scott and Jackie to discuss a little bit more in the weeds of what's going on and how the process works and what's happening at Brian McMahon. But in general, the idea was that the Dahlios had actually seen a lot of work that was going on at McMahon. They saw the culture that was developed there through Funds for Teachers and the Future Project. And through that, they realized that they would be an ideal candidate to be approached about being part of the RISE network. Those conversations went on, Scott, for probably about a year currently till you guys were actually then officially made a member of the RISE network. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Scott and Jackie, and they're going to talk a little bit more about the team and what they're doing at Brian McMahon.
Thanks, Ralph. So just one point of clarification. When RISE reached out, we've always been great at identifying students who require intervention, but we've not always had all the arrows in the quiver to provide the intervention. When RISE reached out, it seemed like a great opportunity, but we took our time. We wanted to vet them as a project to make sure that they fit our needs. So we spent some time meeting with people in the other schools to kind of talk to teachers, talk to administrators. Turned out to be the right fit. So as Ralph said last year, in June, we kind of started our formal relationship with RISE. What RISE provides us, first and foremost, is an incredibly accessible data dashboard. We have PowerSchool. PowerSchool allows you to run reports, but sometimes it's clunky the way it kind of provides that information. RISE has a very kind of visual dashboard where you can click on various colored indicators, and it provides for you lists of students, lists of classes. I'm not doing it justice the way I'm explaining to you, but it is a really powerful tool for us to understand which students require intervention at any point. In addition to the data dashboard, there's protocols, data team protocols that they've tried and true in the first cohort of schools that they bring to bear and help us work through the process to see how they can be really powerful in assisting students. In addition to that, professional learning opportunities, the PDs that I've been to that have been run by RISE have been really excellent. Not just that they have great resources and speakers, but the networking of people in other schools of a similar demographic and kind of comparing notes and figuring out how to do right by all of our students. Donors Choose, we have kind of quick access to Donors Choose, up to $2,000 matched money for teachers. So teachers in RISE Network schools have access to, or quicker access to Donors Choose money than people in other schools. And the last thing, I'll just skip to it, is RISE provides between funding from Dalio, but also in-kind funding from Norwalk Public Schools, approximately $300,000. The in-kind funding from Norwalk Public Schools are things that were already in place, that we were doing well, so we didn't have to come up with extra funds, but I think it was a total of around $210,000 from the Dalios. The key focus of RISE is ninth graders being on track. It's the make or break year. So much data shows that ninth graders who fall off track have a greater proclivity to not graduate on time, to drop out of school, to never kind of achieve their potential. So based on data that they took from the schools that they're currently working with in the first cohort, 91% of students who were on track in freshman year graduated on time. 35% of students who were off track graduated on time. One last, or I think I have two more slides. This one just kind of shows how a student might get off track. Student enters high school. We know that eighth graders coming into high school, there's a transition period where they struggle. RISE allows us to identify students before they even come into the building based on these data dashboards. Who are the students who would require this intervention? We're already kind of sitting there waiting to help them. And instead of them kind of falling down that lower track where they start to struggle and then kind of maybe potentially become avoidant, leave school, or fall off track, it keeps them on track. I've said on track a number of times, so that should tell you something. And then based on the work that they've done in the first cohort of schools, you can see how over the time the graduation rates through students who they're working with have risen significantly. So that's kind of the key points. I'm going to turn it over to Jackie, who really is the nuts and bolts and nitty-gritty of it.
Thank you. So RISE uses basically 5 strategies to move from identification of student need to intervention. So I'm going to give you just a bird's eye view because they're very extensive, each one. But I want to focus on just a couple tonight. So one is the summer transition program, which does exactly what it says. It's a bridge program. It's about making sure that the students are acclimated to their new community and also making those relationships already with teachers that they may have in 9th grade, with their coaches, with their peers, and just making sure that that transition from 8th to 9th grade is strong starting in the summer. The on-track coaching opportunities, I'm going to go into that in a little more depth in a second, but essentially it happens in 2 ways. The kids have one-to-one or small group opportunities with their coach, who I'll introduce you in a second. And in addition, we have these on-track conferences that we run quarterly with the kids. And our first set of conferences are tomorrow, so we're really excited about that. So it's PSAT day and on-track conference day. So we're really excited because a lot of scheduling is involved in making all of that come together. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. We also have on-track data teams. So we have teams of teachers, which was quite a feat for us because one of the things that we wanted to make sure happened, and Scott and I worked really hard with Barb to make sure that the kids still had the ability to do the electives they wanted to do, to make sure if there was a pathway they were interested in, they could still do that. So the old approach to team, we didn't quite use that. We kind of cohorted the kids, and we'll do a little bit better next year. Every year we'll get better at it. But all of the kids in this cohort of students have similar math, English, science, social studies, and world language teachers, so that we meet together every other day. So I'll talk more about that. College and career supports. As the kids get older, more of the program focuses on getting them ready, whatever supports they need, whether it's SAT, whether it's college visits, whether it's financial aid work. We actually just attended an awesome financial aid workshop where I was able to take on some counselors and other admins. They have an abundance of resources that already have started to make an impact on this area. And then educator-inspired innovations, as Scott mentioned, all of our teachers, not just our RISE teachers, all of our teachers have access to the innovation grants. So if they want to pilot something new, if they want to try something different, it's an opportunity for teachers to be able to earn money for their students in their classroom and do different things. So the on-track data teams, very different from maybe our earlier approach to teaming. It's more an interdisciplinary approach. We meet every other day in 2 separate teams, and we go through very strategic protocols, and I'll get into the dashboard so you can see it in a moment, but we have particular protocols that take a look at student progress in a variety of ways, from drilling down into just one student, that would be the KidStat, to a student-centered data protocol. One of those protocols we use today, we started looking at kids who attend school regularly, like almost 100% attendance, but still are facing challenges in certain areas. So we started looking at them as a cohort, like what is going on? So it's a nice way to look at data in a variety of ways to start thinking strategically about how we can move one student or groups of students. And those other protocols are the same. Each one gets us to dig a little bit deeper and take a look at individual practices as well as what we can do to improve systems in the building. So, and that will, it's actually already informing some of our work, because on the November 5th PD day, we're having a discussion around grading practices that really came out of these meetings that we're having. And these data teams are led not only by myself, but by administrators from RISE. Tanika has taken a large role in that as well. She does our on-track conferences, which I'll talk about in a second. But I just wanted to give you a glimpse of the dashboards. We would love to come back at a later point to really dig in and show you the types of work and the types of data that we see. But there are trends that the squared, the middle picture is really about attendance, behavior, and grades. You can look at a snapshot and see based on attendance, and if you click in one box, you will get the list of students who that applies to. And they have color-coded the graph so that you can really drill down and say, these kids are close, these kids are not so close, these kids are further away. So, you know, it all makes sense and all the systems work well and link together. So we're on-track coaching. Through the innovation grant, we were able to hire two RISE employees that work on site, one of which is Sharina Jimenez, who should look familiar because she worked in the district in a different role previously. But with the on-track coaching, like I mentioned, it happens in 2 ways. Sharina and Avery meet with the kids weekly. Very small group or one-on-one. Some have daily check-ins or check-outs. Some have, you know, push in during instructional support. They push into classrooms where the kids are actually working. They communicate with the staff. They come to all of the data team meetings. So they do all of this kind of coaching to provide that safety net for kids. In addition, our on-track conferences, which involve a larger portion of our staff, and this is one of the strategies that Tanika has been coordinating for us, which we'll be doing tomorrow, is a quarterly meeting with the kids where they look at a sheet of how they're doing. It's totally positive. Even if you have all Fs, you're still coming to school. So why are you here? Let's work on a plan. How can we fix it? How can I help you? So we have some strategic questions that we ask kids, and then we move from there into this plan where they are monitored and to make sure that those goals that they set up at these conferences actually come true. So to wrap up, we had only a few minutes tonight. We anticipate doing something in much more depth later. But we wanted to make sure that you kind of got a sense of the way that these strategies are working and how they're already impacting what's going on in the building. We have teachers talking and meeting regularly. We are doing deep dives in terms of data and looking at individual student progress and groups of student progress. We're working with our RISE partners. We're already getting involved in lots of PD around everything. Financial aid, around moving students, about what are our goals, our school improvement plan goals, how can we tie all these things together. So, you know, it's very exciting work, and we truly have a partnership. And even though our RISE partners are not here tonight, they helped us put our presentation together. It's truly a group effort, and they're with us every step of the day and in our building all of the time. So I wanted to leave a little time for questions. If anyone had any.
Pardon me if I missed it. So this is affecting all the students in Brickman or a subset? How many?
So that's the interesting part. So the caseload for our on-track coaches, 60 each. So it's 120 kids. However, the strategies that we use are more grade level appropriate. So it goes, the whole 9th grade will be impacted by what we do.
And just for clarification, RISE shows that 120 number. It was actually, we had to kind of go beyond their criteria because we didn't have 120 students who appeared to be at risk coming out of 8th grade. So we kind of expanded the criteria.
And we're looking at things like attendance grades and behavior. In addition, the whole idea is be or better for college and career success. So we also have the opportunity to work with kids more intensely who maybe are not reaching that mark, who are just a little bit below.
And I so appreciate this work. It's incredible work. And I invite all of us to talk about how to spread this across the district to our other high schools, everything that we learn at Brian McMahon through this, that we can then share it with the rest of the district.
I know Ralph can talk a little bit more about it, but the data dashboard, when Scott, when he first kind of heard about the program, he's like, Jackie, you need to come take a look at this. I know you're going to love it. So I was like, okay, whatever it is, I'll do it just to have access to that. So I think that the dashboard piece of it is,
It's already done.
yes,
So
it's
actually-
running behind the scenes for everybody.
Right.
So it's about making those connections so that people can see how to use it.
And so my conversations with the RISE Network, with Emily and Fred is their data guru. The way that this normally rolls out in most districts is you have your partner school, and that first year, you think of them as almost the pilot of moving things forward. They get the supports. But in time, they become to be able to turnkey some of that work. So no, Jackie and I have talked about that, how we can kind of bring at one point or another, but they need a year under their belt, and that's really what RISE recommends. But the data actually is already running live, so I can pull the same dashboards. They actually exist already for the rest of our high school students.
Right,
As well as, I should probably say, for our K-8 students. So this is going to be able to expand into middle school and other areas. RISE doesn't do that work, but our benefit is that we actually get dashboards that we can actually use towards that purpose over time.
Do you have the resources you need to roll that out district-wide?
No, we'll be talking, when we do a deeper dive,
Okay.
that's one of the things that we would definitely recommend is looking at this, is how do we get to that point?
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Bruce? It sounds like a great program. I wonder how long a school can actually function and improve without such a program. We are in the process of, as you know, of improving our guidance services, expanding our guidance services, professionalizing our guidance services. And it would seem to me that you all would somehow have to coordinate all of your work together to ensure that not only these students are doing well, but the school as a whole. Where do the counselors fit in this whole scenario? And the
So-
psychologists and
sorry.
the other support personnel in the school?
Okay, so we have a comprehensive group that works together with each kid. So, for example, I work with the 10th grade class, but I work with the 9th grade class because I'm working through the RISE program. So with the counselors, we look at, do they have what they need? Like, is this child scheduled appropriately? What other services or what other background information do you have that we need to support this child? So the on-track coach, and I can have Sharina talk about it a little bit more, the on-track coach and the counselor kind of work hand in hand because it's a big job. And sometimes the needs are very, very great. And the amount of contact time that kids who are falling kind of through the cracks need is very different from the student who was flying by themselves that just, hi, how you doing? Yeah, your schedule's great. But these kids need a completely different set of skills to support them. And sometimes they do need the daily check-in. They need the check-out. They need the push into my study hall if I have one. Most of them don't have them. But if I have one, like, can you tutor me during that time frame? Like, that's the type of intensive work that the kids need, because it becomes more of a emotional situation for them where they think they can't because they haven't tasted success. So it involves a lot of contact time. Yeah.
So one more thing to consider is, in some school districts, they actually, the on-track coaches are certified school counselors who they hire, because the work is very similar in some ways to that of a school counselor. I think what our ninth grade counselors would tell you from last year is the amount of time that they spent trying to intervene and provide for the needs of a relatively small number of students took them away from doing great work with all of their students. So by bringing in 2 on-track coaches, Sharina and Avery, they're able to, and they're not replacing the work of the school counselors, but they're case managing these students on a day-to-day basis. And Sharina can tell you 60 students are taking up all of her time because the needs are great. As Mike had mentioned, impacted students, a lot of them are students who are, who come from some difficult backgrounds. So they're able to do that work. And then I think what that does is and while counselors are still part of the work that's being done, it also allows them the time to serve the needs of all of their caseload.
Oh, I agree, because at our last workshop, when we discussed the counseling, sorry, I still have the floor, anything that can alleviate the pressures on them
Right.
is much needed.
And we had actually considered, do we look to hire 2 full-time certified counselors? And we said, it didn't seem like the right move at the time, considering everything was going on with counseling redesign.
I think I'm last, so I think it's Julie and Sarah.
No, actually, Sarah was next.
Yeah.
This sounds wonderful, and I hesitate to even ask this question, but it always occurs to me whenever we have an outside partner that's working with more data, if there are any additional privacy concerns with students and how that's being addressed.
So I will speak to that, and Ralph can speak to that as well. I have to tell you, their professionalism around student confidentiality is unreal. Even within the data portal, like most of our trainings when we initially started the work, when the school year began, it was all about that. It was about norms and following norms. It was about not printing, keeping things electronic, not sharing access, not staying logged on. Confidentiality and professionalism and positivity around and solutions, being solution-based around student challenges is their #1 priority. So, and like I said, even though Sharina is a RISE employee, she works at the Brian McMahon building every single day. She reports to us every day. And, she's in and around these children, their families, the social workers, everything. So that is a #1 priority. And so far, I have been so impressed about the ability to keep things confidential. And people really, they shut the door. They they do things to make sure that we're ensuring that the confidentiality of student records stay that way, and that we're all working from a positive point of view as a champion for the student to do better. So, if that can help. And there's other things that we did.
I mean, from a data privacy standpoint, they are probably the most knowledgeable group that I work with across the board. And Fred Benton, who heads up their data portion of what they do, he's in New Haven. He is brilliant. I mean, it's really, he is kind of like the data guru. Does a lot of work at state level too, as well around. We're pretty locked down with the idea of data privacy with our students with RISE.
Thank you, that's very reassuring.
Julie?
Thanks. One quick note to Mr. Kimmel, I just have to do my due diligence as a member of the Counseling Redesign. It's not guidance services, it's counseling services. So talking about changes, adults making changes, it'll come in time. So one quick question, this looks great so far. One quick question on the family engagement piece, especially knowing the number of families in our community that speak a language other than English at home. I'm wondering how you all, with that there is a component of family engagement here, how that's being addressed with our families, who, especially parents and grandparents and whoever is the primary caregiver, speak a language other than English at home.
Right. That was one of our top priorities. We made sure that in working with any special population, we want to have the ability to communicate, and that was a key factor in making sure that we could do that. Sharina is bilingual. We have that as an access point for parents who really don't speak any English. And we also are, now that our roster is solidified, it took a while, but we're at the 120. We have plans for family nights where parents will come in, We'll go over some of the same processes that we do with the kids, with the conferences, so they can see the kinds of outreach and the kinds of services that we're trying to offer students within the school day, beyond the school day, on the weekend. So we're really kind of working to make sure that parents are, one, fully aware, notified through email, notified through letters home, notified through let's come in and talk, and let's talk about the experience that the kids are having and give us some feedback. We're constantly looking at feedback. I think it's kind of part of the whole RISE organization as well. Constant, like, let me know how that was. Whether it's just a simple meeting, was that okay? Was I, we're always looking for feedback, and it's starting to kind of blend with how we do regular business as well. If that answers your question.
I just want to add, Mike, just a quick comment. I know that you'd mentioned Ralph and Scott. It's a pilot right now at Ryan McMahon High School, and I know Barbara had mentioned as well sharing this, especially with Norwalk High School at some point in the future. Do we have an idea when that might happen?
Like I said, in talking with RISE, they usually say, give this a year.
Okay,
in your
yeah,
first
sure.
building before you actually move on to the next one.
Okay. I mean, to me, it's almost in tandem with our counseling services, like kind of going hand in hand. It's almost an enhancement, I believe, in my opinion, to what we currently have and what we're working on with our redesign of our counseling services. And also, I think the critical piece looking at this whole, what you've set up, and we appreciate all that you've done on this, because this is, even though this was brief, there was a lot of information in here. But the summer transition program for a lot of these kids going into 9th grade, that's where some will fall through the cracks. So that critical part, getting them on board with our counseling services and then something like this, I think will be a key component to the success of this program.
Yes.
I think we're, if I can just.
Yep, sure.
I think we're on the cusp, the cutting edge of what the next best practice is going to be in terms of using data to drive effective use of counseling resources. We know we have, short resources and we have to deploy them appropriately. So I agree that it's very exciting work.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good.
Thanks, Jackie.
Appreciate it.
Is that 10 minutes?
Thanks, Scott. I think that's more.
It was just right. Thank you very much. And again, thank you for your leadership and your efforts.
Thank you.
So next item on my report, I want to just have you recall that about a year ago, following your self-evaluation at your retreat 2 years ago, Ms. Corbett presented an action plan that included the need for new board member orientation, if you recall that. I had the opportunity recently to meet with Dr. Kimmel and Ms. Corbett, and of course this is one of her continuing contributions to this board before she goes off of it. We were able to devise what we thought was a reasonable plan for new board member orientation. So it would be in 2 parts, and part 1 would actually be arranged by Dr. Kimmel right after the election, and he would be contacting any new board member. So this is not to include Ms. Harris or Mr. Meek, who have experience on the board, but these would be folks who have had no board experience. And as a result of his service now on the CABE Board of Directors, he will be able to have a trainer come down to Norwalk to do phase 1 of the orientation at a date convenient to the new board members. And so that would be part 1, and CABE would handle many of the legal issues that board members should be aware of, and I believe that is a half-day session, is that correct?
Well, they'll arrange it any which way is best for us.
Okay, so that's part 1. Part 2 would occur on Saturday morning, November 23rd, when we're all in the Thanksgiving spirit. And that will be done internally at our central office. We'll have a breakfast, and we'll have a 4-hour session for new board members that will focus on 3 aspects. One would be board meetings, business meetings, what to expect at a business meeting, how a business meeting is run, what's appropriate for an agenda, how is the agenda developed, so on and so forth. Work sessions, what is the purpose of work sessions? Where do the topics derive from relative to the strategic plan and our priority implementation steps? And then the committee process. So this board has established a strong committee process. A new board member needs orientation to that. The second aspect is the district office, where new board members would look at an org chart of each of our functions, and members of our senior management team would be present to talk about the functions within their area of responsibility. So the new board member will know who to go to, but also what everyone is doing at our district office. And then finally, the third aspect that Brenda Williams and I will work with new board members on is communications. Dealing with the media, dealing with social media, how does one deal with employees, communication with their union leadership, and communications with parents. So we think between these two sessions, part one and part two, part one would be done by Kay, part two internally, we'll have a reasonably good orientation for our new board members, and based upon their feedback and yours, we can work to improve that further for the future. Okay, third item is the proposal to address the recent influx of ELLs in our Norwalk public schools. You have, every board member has in front of them this document. Now, this document was presented by Helene Becker and myself to the Finance Committee last week, and I believe it was presented by Helene Becker and Dr. Myers to the Curriculum Committee this evening. So I am not going to go through the document. Suffice it to say, it is a very detailed and well thought out plan that responds directly to the influx of English language learners in our system this year. So as of today, we have 2,050 ELLs. That's up 13% in 1 year, 59% since 2013. We still are registering students, although the volume has tapered off. We anticipate we may register another 50 within the next month. Many of the large number of ELLs who have entered our schools are SLIFE, students with limited and/or interrupted formal education. And considering the unique needs of SLIFE, it is advisable to keep their classes under 20 students. We are up to 28 in all cases at this point and have had to close a number of sections. So the proposal set forth that you have in front of you represents what is needed in the 2019-20 school year to sustain our ELL services at the current level. Now, you'll be having a workshop in December on what our ELL services should look like in the future, given the tipping point that we have arrived at in some schools. But this is a proposal simply to maintain our current services based upon the number of students that we have received unanticipated this year. So it includes staffing that's needed right now, since several ESL and ESL content courses at the high schools are closed or over-enrolled. It also includes staffing K-12, and it anticipates serving the ELL population throughout the school year so that we do not face another crisis in a few months. What that means is we're anticipating another 90 as we received last year in January. And we believe that surge will be an annual event. It includes support and supervision for our ELL teachers, much needed support for general education teachers and content teachers who have the best intentions but need the instructional tools and supplies to be able to effectively plan lessons and teach classes that may consist of 25% or more students who speak very little English. Principals also need this support, as many are struggling to figure out how to best serve the growing and changing ELL population. SLIFE and students with trauma are now in our schools, and we need the resources to support them, including in this proposal 2 bilingual social workers who would work directly with students and their families. You will note in the proposal that's in front of you is we have a fairly detailed budget and needs at each level. We have needs at the high school totaling $660,000. That's where the greatest needs lie. At middle schools, $230,000, $495,000 for program expansion at our elementary schools. The full proposal for a year is $1,775,000. What we are going to be asking the city for for a special appropriation is $1,173,000, which would be the cost of addressing these services from November 1st on. The remaining $600,000 I plan to include in your 2021 operating budget so that these services can be offered fully in the school year next year. Again, I think, I want to congratulate our staff for, very fast but thoughtful work relative to addressing this issue. We are out there looking for people at this point. We had a meeting today with the Norwalk High School administration over steps we wanted to take immediately there. Norwalk High School, by the way, happens to be the most impacted in any school. In past years, it's been Brian McMahon. This year, it's Norwalk High School, and we can't explain that, but that is the case. So. Just asking, we're of course asking for the board's support in addressing this and your support of the special appropriation that we need to make to the city. I might point out that there is federal and state law requiring us to offer each and every one of these services. So that this is not a choice, it's rather something that we must do.
Okay. Stephen, thank you for your report. Any questions, Bruce?
Yeah, first, it's not exactly a question. We discussed it fairly thoroughly at the committee meeting before this meeting, and one thing that occurs to me is that this truly meets the definition of what a special appropriation is for, when you should make a special appropriation. It is an emergency. It could not possibly have been anticipated. There's laws involved. The city has very little choice if we are going to conform to educational law. We have an educational emergency, not our doing, impossible to plan for. And I'm sure the city will do the right thing. We will go through the special appropriation process. We got a little ahead of ourselves. We think that this is something we will have to look at beginning possibly in December, long term. It's kind of interesting because I don't think demographers are in a position to predict what is essentially a political issue and how it will play out in the years ahead. But however it plays out, it is something out of our control, and we may find ourselves in this situation again in the future. We should make sure, my only concern is that we get the best sense of what's going on, where we are, and to create somewhat of a cushion, whether it's through reserve teachers, some kind of contingency, memorandum of understanding, something that keeps folks calm. When this kind of thing happens, we have something in place that enables us to deal with it expeditiously to ensure that the students, we minimize the loss of instructional time for the students who end up here. And we'll begin discussing that when we have our workshop. Thank you.
Okay, any other board member comments? Okay, so I think that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you.
Mr. Meek?
Yeah, I would like to make a motion to add an item to tonight's agenda that requires a 2/3 vote. It's nothing in writing in front of me. It's just I would like to add an item that shows the board's resolve, to document the board's resolve to support the superintendent in his activities to request and secure us an appropriation for this purpose that we just discussed.
Seconded by Ms. Meyer Mitchell. Any?
This is the vote to add to the agenda.
Yes.
Right?
So I think no discussion, right? We just have a vote?
No, doesn't matter.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
All in favor? I think it's unanimous. All 8 of us are in favor of such a motion.
Now you need a motion to.
Oh, right.
What are we gonna
All added to the agenda?
Right.
Sorry,
I
added to the agenda.
I would
Now you
make
make
a
the
motion to vote on the added agenda item. A yes vote would be to support the superintendent, and a no vote would be to not.
Second.
Okay, seconded by Dr. Kimmel. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unanimously approved that the board supports the superintendent in this request and our plan as we think we need to proceed with this unexpected development. Okay, we will now move to actions, and we will do a consent calendar. The consent calendar will include approval of personnel, retirements, one hire, resignations, approval of budget transfers, and approval of trips. One Road Middle School to Boston, Salem, Mass. The other West Rocks to Boston. These are both taking place next year. I mean, in the school year, but next calendar year. Could I have a motion? Mr. Lyon, seconded by Ms. Lemieux. Any discussion? Yes, Ms. Meyer
I just
Mitchell?
want to mention that I'm sorry to see Brian Ruther's name on the resignations because we've just had the joy of getting to know him, and it's disappointing that he's leaving.
Okay. All in favor of the consent? 1, 2. All in favor? Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you. The next vote is acceptance of the report and recommendation of the school start time committee.
And just to be clear, Mr. Chairman, so 3 is simply accepting the report, whereas 4 would be the actual implementation.
Correct, and you'll see in your packet there, you have the report separately, and then you have the school start times recommended as a separate item, separate vote.
Okay, so acceptance of the report and the committee's recommendation. Could I have a motion?
I move that we accept the report.
Dr. Kimmel, seconded by Ms. Keys. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just take the liberty of thanking the members of the committee who worked on this at this time.
Of course.
They are Jacqueline Ahrens and Tanika Vellucci, who you met earlier in the RISE report, Dr. Sasha Carr, who's a sleep specialist, Joseph Mataferi, the former athletic director and Connecticut State Athletic Director of the Year from Brian McMahon, Joanne Malinowski, who is our nursing supervisor, Dr. Frank Costanzo, our Chief of Operations, Jennifer Masson, Wolf Pit Principal, April Gilbo, who is on the SGC of Norwalk High School, Jimmy Napoli, also on the SGC of Norwalk High School, Maureen Ireland, Math Department Head at Norwalk High School, Rob Carl, member of the English Department at Norwalk High School, Brenda Wilcox-Williams, our Communications Officer, Heidi Key served as Board Liaison, Joanna Zanvetter, our busing coordinator, James McDonald, representing the SGC at Brian McMahon, and Justin Zarega, Dr. Justin Zarega, Special Education Department Head at Brian McMahon. All of these folks, like you, served as volunteers, did really yeoman's work over the period of almost a year. And, while I'm thanking people, I also want to thank the various pediatricians in Norwalk who gave their strong endorsement to the committee's recommendations, and they include Dr. Norman Weinberger, who's our school medical advisor, and the pediatricians of the AmeriCares Free Clinic, the Day Street Community Health Center, the Norwalk Community Health Center, Park Street Pediatrics, the Center for Advanced Pediatrics, East Avenue Pediatrics, the Robert Appleby School-Based Health Center, and our own Norwalk Health Department. Thank you all for your contributions to this effort.
Okay. So obviously a cross-section of all stakeholders, you know, from parents, SGC members, administrators, teachers, central office staff, health experts. I mean, everybody was represented and was at the table, by the sounds of it. So all in favor for accepting the report? Okay, it's unanimously accepted. We'll now move on to the next item, action item, which is the approval of revised school start and end times for the 2020-2021 school year. Could I have a motion? Heidi Keys.
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Kimmel. Any discussion?
Yes.
Dr. Kimmel.
Thank you. One thing I want to emphasize, we've been talking about this a long time. We have indeed listened to the public. Since the forum that took place here a couple weeks ago, we are beginning to look carefully at our existing bus routes, where there are some buses that are late, where there are problems. We are aware that we're working with a compressed time frame and that we have to be up to speed on our bus routes. So we will look at those bus routes carefully. Remember, they will change somewhat. We are adding buses, 5 buses. And we will do everything necessary to ensure that the buses are running smoothly. We are very concerned with the after-school programs, sports, and after-school jobs. The high schools particularly will be looking at their schedules to create opportunities, create the flexibility necessary for the students who have after-school obligations. When traffic issues were brought up, I would say possibly about 6 weeks ago, the Curriculum and Instruction Committee decided to meet with the Mobility, Transportation, and Parking Department of the city. Mayor Rowland sat in on the meeting, as I mentioned earlier this evening, and they've recognized that traffic and things that pertain to traffic, the quality of the road, sidewalks, is really not part of the Board of Ed's purview. It will become part of the city side of the budget, and they will look into it and provide sufficient funds. They also brought up the necessity, our Jessica Casey, the Director of Economic and Community Development, suggested we've got to begin to look at the walkability near our schools to ensure that kids are safe. And we will have to do that on a long-term basis. It's not cheap, but we are intending to do it. We also agreed at that meeting that we will survey, the Board of Ed will survey parents, particularly to find out why they drive their kids to school or why they drop them off from a car, why they don't take the bus, to acquire all the knowledge necessary to ensure that we have an idea of what the problems are and how to fix them. Regarding the comments today, and some of which were issues that were brought up a couple weeks ago, we have definitely looked at other districts, especially Greenwich, which had some problems early on in 2017, which they addressed. I think we're ahead of the curve, and we've learned from some of the mistakes that they've made. I think we have to carefully look into the P-TECH situation and NCC's schedule. That's important because NCC's got to understand what the changes are to ensure that they're not making changes that conflict with what we want. To make sure that is all worked out. That's a great program. We cannot do anything to jeopardize that program. So going forward, we have to communicate with NCC and make sure there are no issues. An issue that goes way, way back, and I never quite understand it, is in Norwalk, late buses. Apparently students here, they either get their tokens or they ride for free with wheels. It's complicated. I don't quite understand it, but the gentleman who brought that issue up about how late wheels runs, how late second practices will go, and things like that, we have to look into that to make sure that the students are involved not only in sports, but in whatever it is that requires them to stay in school later. We can't discriminate just because they take a bus, and there are no more buses. So we have to figure that out. And I think going forward, in terms of the future, I don't understand why we don't have layers of late buses going from the schools. I get the costs, but that is a hardship, and if you can't afford a car, if you don't own a car, it could be a problem. But we do have to look into to see if we are making it impossible for the kids to, the late practices or late programs to get home on a wheels bus. So we'll see what we can do. We're going to have to work with the city on some of this, whether it's wheels, whether it's sidewalks, whether it's roads, whether it's safety issues, traffic calming issues, but we plan to do it. We were already doing it. We will monitor this and do everything we can to make sure it is implemented smoothly. Remember, first and foremost, this is a health issue. We're doing it primarily because it's a health issue, and that's the main thing here, and I hope we vote accordingly. We will do our due diligence. I know future board members will do their due diligence. Dr. Adamowski, Mayor Rillig will help do whatever they can to ensure that this comes all properly. So I hope everyone, I'm going to vote for it. I hope others do too, and I'm looking forward to making sure this is implemented in a way that meets the concerns of everybody. And again, thank you for coming out and speaking to us. We did hear you.
Brian.
I've made some public comments about this recently, and I'm not going to relitigate those. I'm simply a no vote based on what I see as traffic tsunami in this city. So, you know, I hope it works out if this measure passes and that we have a successful rollout. I do support the initiative. I just see what I've seen personally is just in the last 6 months, and you know, DOT, God bless them, they're doing 3 major river crossings in the city right now. There's Jersey barriers up on the Merritt, emergency vehicles can't get through. We're at Waze full adoption, and it's just, traffic has been a nightmare in this city the last 6 months, and it seems like it's getting worse. And I would hate to see for this to fail for reasons out of our control. And I think with the Strawberry Hill Ave Bridge going out, Yankee Doodle, it seems like it's going to be a 5-year project. Who knows how long they're going to be on the Merritt. I would just like to see this done. You know, I wish those projects would complete, and I would have no issues with pushing forward on this. I just think we're setting ourselves up for a big fall here. So I'm a no vote. Thanks.
Okay, Julie.
Thank you. I think there are several things that I've been thinking about quite a bit since we started this process over a year ago, and that the report articulated, and then further conversations have helped solidify it in my mind. And I think when I think about this, first of all, I think about what's right for students, and not just the 4,000 students or slightly under 4,000 students in our high schools now, but I think about every single high school student in the future. I think about how this will impact my own family, as I will soon be selecting an elementary school for my son and figuring out the logistics of how to get my son there if bus transportation isn't provided. I think about the impact of chronic sleep deprivation, not only that I am about to experience in the very near future, which is horrible, but I also reflect back on my own high school experience. And when I hear arguments and statements from other adults in the communities that say, we did it, we sucked it up, we managed to get through high school, I think back on the chronic sleep deprivation, the overextendedness of my peers, myself in high school, that we experienced. And I think this is not about test scores at all. This is about the social emotional learning and the social emotional health of our students. And I think about the increased anxiety rates, increased depression rates that our students face. Part of that caused by a variety of cases. Could be sleep deprivation, could be our increased access to technology, could be our increased access and pressure to get into colleges and participate in every single extracurricular that's known to man and that's available. Maybe it's not such a horrible thing to not participate in so many extracurricular pieces. I also do think about our low-income families and communities, and that this will have a logistical impact on and potentially a financial impact on. And so in addition to the pieces Dr. Kimmel spoke about related to traffic and scheduling and some of these other pieces and transportation, I also implore the incoming board and the district to really look carefully at both before and after school options, including sliding scales, sliding fee scales, or free childcare, or how we can better arrange this for working families that really don't have other options and what those impacts are. And so I think there are a variety of pieces that need to be extremely closely monitored. We need to look at attendance rates. We need to start collecting some baseline data this year on social emotional health so that we have data to compare it to in the future. If we don't collect that data by the end of this year, we're missing our window to collect that data to compare it to. And so I do think this will be a change, but I will be voting yes for this initiative, not because I don't underestimate the logistical constraints that this will put on adults, but I can't put logistical issues of adults ahead of the needs of our students.
Thank you, Julie. Sarah?
I'll be quick because I know we've all been here for a long time. I just wanted to address something that I found dismaying that I was reading a lot of today on social media, which was a mistake. I shouldn't have gone on social media. There were a lot of people expressing the fact that they thought that this was a done deal, that there was no point in expressing their opinions and that it was already decided and that there was, I don't want to describe it qualitatively any more than that, but I just wanted to say from my perspective as a board member that it was a very difficult decision to make, what I would choose to vote, that I know I reached out to and interacted with a lot of stakeholders. I know that my fellow board members did too, and I also wanted to say that the Board of Education is not a monolith. It's 9 individuals, 8 of whom are here with different constituencies and different ways of thinking about problem solving, and I don't know, it just seemed important to address that.
She's waiting for you.
Thank you, Sarah. Heidi?
Thank you. I don't want to belabor this. I've already said quite a bit, I think, already on this, but I just want to bring up a point. I know that there was mentioned many times on different occasions that it really wasn't, not necessarily a cohesive group, but not representing the community. And we had principals, we had teachers, we have governance council members, we had transportation coordinators, school bus consultants. I mean, we had a broad representation. And I think many of you probably remember when we first started this focus group a while back, I was attending many of these meetings, and we wanted to do as much outreach. And I discussed that to really get out there and do as much as we could. And I will emphasize again, originally it was going to happen a lot quicker, and we wanted to delay it. We said we need another year. Financially, we need to make sure we can do this. As well as, even more importantly than that, is to make sure that we have that outreach, that we're going out to the community and really getting their input. So I feel that as a committee, we did our due diligence on that, and I am definitely voting, excuse me, I have a cold, so I'm getting over that. I feel that we've done a lot of outreach on this, but as a Board of Ed member and also a parent who also has a high schooler, and I see it, and I think it's important for our students to have that extra hour. And as I mentioned before, the number one compelling reason is really the health of our students. It really is. It's out there, and it's really, really important. And back to Mr. Kimmel's point, getting those surveys out, which we did before, but I think even more importantly than that is making sure those surveys go out, that they go out as far as the sidewalks and why are some parents bringing their children versus the busing. And I think it's important that we get the surveys out electronically, an actual paper document. I use both, email as well as this, and also finding out how many families it's actually reaching. So I think that's important. Also maybe having some focus groups on that and talking about that and getting that input. We're all about transparency. We want to make sure that the public is included as well as board members, but I know for me personally, why would you bring your son or daughter to school? Is it convenient? Is it not convenient? Are they getting up so early it's hard to get them up and you're going to work? So we want to check, we want to find out those important answers to many of those questions. And even some of those questions, maybe we can get some input from the community on what you're looking for and how we can help that. And on the city side, as far as sidewalks are concerned, I know driving by Norwalk High School, some of these students, there is no sidewalk. So it's really quite treacherous for them to make that cross with all the traffic on Strawberry Hill and then on County Street. If you look at County Street, where a lot of these students are, there's apartments across the street. Many of them are crossing over. There really is no crosswalk. So if you're not paying attention, it can be a really, really dangerous situation for our students. So I think we need to also, Dr. Kimmel, take a look at that in Strawberry Hill as well as County Street. And they're coming in different directions. And also, one final point, having perhaps a police officer, and this is for Mayor Rilling, on the city side, if perhaps we can have an officer, because I think it's so important, whether it's Brian McMahon or Norwalk High School, having that extra sense of security for many of our students. And again, other than health, in this case, with students, safety as well. Thank you.
Brian?
It's kind of a point and then just a question for Heidi.
Yeah.
I heard from so many Norwalk High parents in my neighborhood, the city's so jammed up now, they're actually driving through Westport and then they're coming down Kings. So now you never used to have this. You have a massive line of people trying to make the left-hand turn into Norwalk High. So, and they can't because the right-of-way is coming from down county, from Strawberry Hill. And so, like, I don't know, I thought, if we could do something like, we have that fence, that gate on King Street.
Yeah.
If there could be an option to, like, open that up just in the morning and let parents drop kids there, just to get it moving.
But that's actually great feedback, though. I mean, we come the other direction, but it's almost the right of way. Like, oh, you want to go, stop, and parents just kind of work it out. But there's got to also be a better solution, especially, I think, for the students that are walking, because you've got many in that area that are actually walking that, to me, is unsafe for some of these students. So I think if we look at that, but that's another suggestion.
If I could, I think that's a really good idea. I noticed that our plans for Election Day for our schools that are polling places includes the opening of the King Street gate. And why couldn't we do that at other times?
It is.
Okay, Barbara?
I am excited for the possibility for our students to have better mental health, physical health, and hopefully higher achievement through this, and seek more balance in their lives and in how they manage their homework and their activities so that they can also continue to just be kids. I do think it is incumbent on the board to monitor, to spend this year until this goes into effect, working on the issues that our citizens identified, which are very real. For me, childcare is the top of the list because families need to be able to go to work and know that their kids are safe and they're getting to school and from school safely. So we do have to work on that. Okay. I plan to also specifically be looking at the Tier 1 and Tier 3 elementary schools and monitoring how that goes for those families, because we heard a lot of those parents in their emails and their comments saying that 7:45 as a first bell is too early, 3:50 as a second, as a release is too late. We have to look at that and see how it actually goes when it plays. I happen to get out of elementary school at 3:45 and I'm here to tell the story. So I think we can learn from monitoring. And I hope the community will find constructive ways to communicate when problems come up, to write to the appropriate person in the appropriate way, to ask for help when something isn't working. Because nobody on this board wants this to fail. We all want it to succeed, and we need to do that together as a community.
Okay, well, Mr. Lyons, please.
Might as well
We're all
speak
in.
for everybody else. It's my last chance. I'm going to vote yes on this proposal. I certainly respect the reasons that Mr. Meek has indicated for his opposition. I wanted to make a point that, being having been on the Common Council and every other commission in the city over the years, you can look at almost any major project that we've done, the aquarium, the new community college, this building. We didn't have every answer before we approved the project. It's expected that you approve a new school building project. For instance, the Ely School, we knew when we approved it, we'd have to get zoning approval and state traffic approval and environmental approval and parks approval. And you approve the project, and then you move forward and you get the approvals that you need to get it done. That happened with all major projects. You make the policy decision, and then you rely on people that work for you to make this, to carry out the steps necessary to make it happen. And I think in this case, people have raised good issues, as they raised about other projects, like the aquarium. And when the aquarium was originally approved, we didn't have any parking plan. We came up with it as we went along. And, you know, one of the things that a line that I like is we've all heard this line, don't allow the perfect to be the enemy of the good. And every project that you come up with in Norwalk, someone will point out, it isn't perfect, therefore we shouldn't do it. And if we listen to that, we wouldn't have an aquarium, and we wouldn't have the city hall, and we wouldn't have a community college, and a lot of other things that we've done over the years. So I think, you know, approving it as this is the plan we want to carry out, and then working out the administrative details later is a very reasonable thing to do. And this board and the staff is fully aware of those issues and intends to address them. So we're not approving it and, you know, throwing caution to the wind and, well, I hope it works. That's not how we got here, and that's not how this will be implemented. So I'm confident that just as we've been able to carry out a lot of other big projects that people were skeptical about, we will be able to carry this one out too.
Okay. Well, yes, Barbara?
Oh, I was going to move.
No, I actually wanted to make a comment. I just wanted to say my concern here has been, I think, I can see, I kind of wanted to, I could copy what Sarah said, because I've been very on the fence and gone back and forth ever since it started. As my comments at the beginning tonight said, you know, we had this as an implementation step in the summer of 2018, and we debated about what to do for the budget for 18-19, 19-20. And so I've kind of gone back and forth, but I think with the current emergency that we currently face with these, this influx of unexpected students, which have a lot of costs, where we're maxed out on our current resources, we're going to have to add resources. We just voted to request, you know, to endorse the plan to ask for supplemental appropriation. I just wonder if this is the time where we're, you know, spending, it's going to be close to $2 million unexpectedly, to also be asking for $500,000 to implement something that has been in the works, but maybe, you know, we have to prioritize because money doesn't grow on trees. But anyway, that's my take on the situation. Barbara?
I just want to rebut that point. I'd like to point out that Mr. Dashowitz reported in September that we did not tap into the general fund to the tune of $6 million as we had planned. And in fact, we had a surplus and we banked another $6 million. So $500,000 is not going to break the bank on this initiative, in my opinion.
That's your opinion, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Okay, let's have a vote. All those in favor?
We have to move.
Motion.
Oh, didn't we start? Didn't we? We had a motion before because we're in discussion.
Yep.
Okay, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All against? And I guess there are no abstentions, so that is 6-2. Thank you very much on this very debated topic. The next item we have is approval of the agreement with the Carver Center for the provision of before and after school programs.
Mr. Chairman, can I say a word about that?
Of course.
Connecting it to the action you just took. So, you know, as Dr. Kimmel said, first and foremost, the start time issue is a health issue. And, you know, once the board sets direction, as you have tonight, adjustments will be made. We know this may be inconvenient for some employees. They will make adjustments. You know, the city will help us relative to reducing traffic on 2 already currently busy streets. And of course, the issue out there is about field time for the private teams. and adjustments will need to be made for that as well. I think, most other factors were, and variables were considered and addressed by the study committee, including your next item, which is the need for before and after school programs. And this item really merges together our After the Bell program with the Carver Center to enable Carver to expand to K-5. They are now 3-5 only, but it ensures that any school can get before and after school care on a sliding scale whenever it wants it. And as you know, under your policy, this is the purview of the SGC. These issues are going to be resolved just as they were 20 years ago when the school start times were last changed, and people will adjust. We know a lot more about student biorhythms and health issues in the past decades and the documented health threats to adolescent students. And as Maya Angelou said, we do the best we can with what we know, and now that we know better, we need to do better. And I just want to thank you for that, for the opportunity for our staff to do that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I apologize. Okay. I thought he was finished.
Well, he wasn't.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Adams-Macy, I loved that you chose the Maya Angelou quote because my mother was one of the first women professors at Dartmouth College, and the first thing that she did was found childcare, daycare and childcare for women professors so they could continue in their careers. She then went to Wake Forest University, where she worked with Maya Angelou to mentor women professors, and the first thing they did was create childcare. You cannot have an equal female workforce if they cannot provide care for their children, and it's incredibly crucial to our community. So thank you.
You can ask Ralph to come up for any questions on this next one. The board has not had, I think, any prior discussion on this. And
we had it, sorry to interrupt, we had it at Finance.
You had it at
We've
Finance?
Been at this at Finance.
Okay, so, Mr. Meek, I guess I would ask you to say a few words about this as well.
Okay.
But basically, we're taking what was our After the Bell program, merging it with the Carver Center's long-established program. And frankly, this has been a higher quality program than what we have been offering. But by doing it, we now have the capacity to serve K through 5, and to provide this service at every school according to the schedule desired by the School Governance Council, before, after, or both, on a sliding scale. Now, several years ago, we had a number of providers, and they have dropped away. Places like Aspire, the YMCA, nobody can make money on this. As our school system has become poorer and the sliding scale has become more dominant in the economic calculation of this. This really requires a partner who gets contributions from donors to be able to supplement and support the services. But anyway, I'm very encouraged by this, and I want to thank Ralph for all of his work that helped bring this about. And if you would just say a couple of words of explanation for it.
Sure, no, definitely. So one of the things that we focused on a few weeks ago, I actually was with Novelette at her board meeting, and the conversation came up about this and what potential this really has. When you really think about it, the Carver Center itself, their revenue, I believe, is with their foundations and money that they bring in, is probably a little over $4 million a year. All that money comes back to Norwalk public school students, except for a very small sliver that is a program in Bridgeport. Everything else is really for us. The give back that we get from the Carver Center for the amount that's actually put in is truly 20-fold. And we're excited to do this. Novelette and I also were talking about this, and when you really think about it, a lot of times she's been able to approach state and local foundation initiatives. By expanding an extra 840 students, she's now putting herself on the national scope. where we may be able to then really start looking at making systemic change in the next few years. So it offers a lot of really great potential for Norwalk in looking at a true partnership with, with a community partnership that can grow and help service more and more students. So it's an exciting opportunity.
Yeah, not much more to add, just to say this was brought to us through finance, and I mean, who wouldn't want the Carver as a partner in this initiative? And it's also going to get us out of the business of doing it in dribs and drabs, and they'll be able to focus on this and bring more resources to it and get us back to our business of educating during school hours.
Definitely. They can scale this much better than we can. For parents, this will be seamless. So really, there is no change at all for parents. We've been making sure that we've been communicating with principals. Parents have been reached out to by the principals as well. And we just want to see this. This is the partnership, obviously, for this year. We plan on continuing this over the next few years.
Yeah, that's a very important point, Ralph. And my wife and I use this service during tax season, and understandably, it's going to be, they're just going to switch the bank account underneath, behind the scenes. The parents won't even probably know the difference that Carver's running this. To them, it'll just still be after the bell.
Yeah, from a finance standpoint for this year, we actually, because we had started parents using a certain system, next year they will get converted before the beginning of the year, but we wouldn't want to do that to parents now. If things have already been set up, it really makes a lot of sense to continue like financially the way that we're moving.
Since Mike is not here, should we have
take a motion?
Okay, I would like a motion to Barbara. I need a second. Julie, all in favor? 5-6 unanimous.
There you
Okay, so in the absence of
7 unanimous.
let's move on to number 6, which is approval of policies.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yes,
that would be great.
All right.
We got the stamina.
We got it. 10 o'clock. It's getting a little hot in here. I don't know how anybody else is feeling that way. Both of these policies we went through in our first read, so we've already read it, discussed it at length during that time. So it's policy 3156, which is safe and secure school facilities, and policy 4111.3, which is minority recruitment. In a moment, I'm going to have Frank and Javier in 1 minute come up. During our last meeting, or the meeting prior to that, I did mention that I thought was important, and I know some of the policy committee members that are here now. We had a wonderful presentation by Javier about minority recruitment as well as the talent office. And I thought it was important for Javier to come and bring that to the full board so the full board can see that. And also we discussed, we've got amazing teachers in Norwalk. We want to make sure that we retain and we keep our teachers. In addition to that, many of our students go on to become teachers themselves, which is wonderful. We want to know where those teachers are. Are they in other communities? They have roots here in Norwalk. We would love to be able to get them back here in Norwalk and retain those teachers that are in other districts. We want them here in Norwalk. They went through a Norwalk school. So wouldn't it be great? They have roots here and they're able to teach here in Norwalk. So we discussed that also at length, how we can do that, whether it's reaching out, checking with other districts on how they're able to also, are you not able to hear me? Oh, I'm sorry, you're counting. How you're able to keep those keep those students, they've earned their degrees, get them back here to teach in Norwalk. So I know Javier has really worked hard on this in the talent office and working on minority recruitment in addition to that. So I believe you're going to be coming up and making a presentation. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Betty.
Oh, here we are. Well, good evening. So actually what I'm gonna talk about briefly here is gonna accomplish a number of things. Originally, we did start talking about the minority recruitment and retention policy for the right reasons. We want to attract the right people to our district because it's the right thing to do, and we want a staff that's reflective of our student population. But this will serve some other purposes as well. We do have a state mandate to put together a minority teacher recruitment and retention strategy. And one of the goals of this strategy by the Connecticut State Department of Education is we need to increase the racial, ethnic, and linguistic diversity of our educators. Currently, there aren't a lot of minority people in the state, so every district is sort of trying to go after the same people, and so part of what we have to do is, how do we differentiate ourselves? What makes a good employment proposition for our prospective applicants and for our current employees here? The state has a minority teacher population of about 8.9%. And Hispanics are probably about 3.8%. And so this is important because as we're expanding our dual language programs, it's going to require us to find people with that particular skill set and those certifications. Now, when we look at the statistics at our district, we're doing a little better. In general, our district people of color population is hovering probably right around 15.5, 15.6%. And for teachers, we're actually hovering right at around 9%, so slightly above the state average. So what we wanted to share with you today was really just some of the tactics and approaches that we're going to be looking at introducing for my office to ensure that this is at the forefront for us. So at the end of the day, right, is we need to be held accountable for the advancement of a diverse, high-performing workforce with a clear employer value proposition that's going to give us a competitive advantage. And we're going to do that through 3 specific goals: talent acquisition, a high-performing organization, and leadership and talent capabilities. I'm going to focus really on goals 1 and 2 today. So talent acquisition is, at the end of the day, we have to position ourselves to be able to really set strategies that are going to help us source the candidates that we need to source. Again, we have some very unique programs that we're introducing: the dual language certification, visual and performing arts. We have the STEAM program that we're rolling out. And so we have to be able to develop some networks and some relationships with these organizations in order to attract the right talent into the organization. We have to expand beyond our just posting of our positions and sort of hoping that the right candidate applies. So we have been looking at contractually what are our obligations and the costs to really to get a little bit deeper with some of our online sourcing strategies, and really leveraging and building relationships with some key schools throughout the district. So UConn, Fairfield University, University of Hartford for our Montessori program. We've actually scheduled meetings with all of these schools to go out and see how can we get some sort of priority. How do we build an internship program so students are coming here, they're doing internships here, and when they're ready to go out into the workforce, Norwalk automatically comes up as a choice of work. So developing those pipelines also mean how are we currently using our resources? So we spent very little time in professional development of our substitute teachers, especially our daily sub teachers. That's a pipeline of candidates that we need to consider and look into, and we need to figure out how do we best leverage that partnership. This may require us to consider partnering with someone who can really provide that day-to-day oversight and the training to really help develop daily subs that could eventually become either long-term substitutes for us or regular teachers. Trying to bring people into the district begins far before, we start talking to them. Our website, very static. Research shows people start to make decisions around where they want to work as they're looking at their website and going through that process of applying for positions. And so I've been working with our corporate communications team to look at how are we going to redesign our current work site and really develop an employment website for our prospective applicants as well as for our current applicants, our current employees. We're rolling out a new employee orientation for all employees coming into the district. It's really, really important that when we bring people into the organization, there's that immediate connection with them. A one-day orientation assimilation, not only where we can teach our rules and regulations and what our expectations are, but really to help draw that line of sight between their role and our strategic plan and how they fit into that plan. And then lastly, we really need to look at some bigger projects here around developing affinity groups, ensuring that we have groups of people that welcome other people that look and speak the way they do, and really developing either some formal or informal mentoring programs. The other piece for people coming into the district as new teachers is we have to look at housing. It's very, very expensive, especially as a new teacher in Norwalk. And so we're going to have to look at how do we develop some partnerships, perhaps with some of the new developers, and see what can we offer, even if it's for some of our Teach for America teachers who come in on a 2-year assignment with the hope that they're going to be here longer. But it's very difficult for these recent grads to come and live in a place that's a little pricey. So these things are around what we're going to do to sort of attract the right people here. Internally, there's some things we also have to focus on. One, we have to look at our recruiting and hiring process. It's very cumbersome. Our systems don't always speak to each other. And so we have to develop a much easier application process to make the experience more livable for folks. Many organizations, people apply for jobs on their telephones. We're not able to do that yet. So we have to look at our process. We have to look at some indicators on how long it's taking us to fill jobs. We have to track where we're finding the right people so that we can invest in those relationships. And we have to understand why are people leaving the organization, right? And what can that data tell us about what we need to do differently in terms of our culture, our engagement, to ensure that we keep the folks that we do have here. And then finally, we really need to understand our workforce. We need to understand our certifications. We need to understand who's here. Can these people be deployed to new programs and new initiatives? And this also speaks to how do we track people who are leaving Norwalk, going to 4-year schools, perhaps to get a teaching degree, and how do we bring them back to Norwalk? So at a high level, those are some of the initiatives that we're going to be focusing on from a talent perspective.
I just want to ask a couple of questions, Javier. Employee orientation is so important. So we're talking about any employee that's hired by Norwalk Public Schools will have an orientation for.
Correct.
Okay, when are we looking, let's say pilot this, or when are we looking to start this? Is this for the following year?
No, we're going to actually kick this off this year in October, the end of October.
End of October. My suggestion when you have this, is that a full, how long is this for, the employee orientation?
The orientation would be a one-day orientation.
Okay, so it's a full day. Okay. I'm just curious to know, once we do that, since this is brand new for all employees, any new employees, how that went. And I know we've talked a lot about surveys and all that, but I think it's actually really important because you get a lot of constructive feedback. So because we're doing this and we're piloting this and it's new, I think it would be important to have some type of survey after just to see how it went. What we did really well at, what are we lacking in, what could we possibly do better?
So that's part of what we're incorporating. Okay. The orientation will consist of the following few sort of modules, if you will.
Right.
So one is, again, really understand our strategic vision and how their role aligns to that vision. We're going to incorporate our customer service principles, just some general human resources principles around preventing a hostile work environment and things of that nature, and also technology, because we all depend on technology, and then of course total rewards, benefits, and what does this mean for them. Those are the components, and we will be surveying people at the end of the session.
Perfect. and then you'll look at the, tally that, look to see what we need, what we don't need, or what we can improve on.
How do we modify it?
And modify. And another just quick comment, I know when we have employees applying, it's AppleTrack, correct? They're applying for online. I know Mr. Barbas had mentioned during one of our meetings, some of our employees or prospective employees are not getting a response back. So I believe you said it was an automated response back where some are not. So I think it's important, I don't know if you addressed that during our last policy meeting, but so they know whether, it was received, they applied it, usually it'll say sent, and they apply their resume and any type of cover letter, any type of references. But if you can let us know what's happened, what takes place when a prospective employee applies through AppleTrack, what type of response they get back. It could be an automated, but eventually they responded back saying, unfortunately, you don't have the position, or...
Yeah, so they, at the front end, they all do get acknowledged. If their resume is submitted appropriately, they will get that acknowledgement. What we are working on now is on the end. So when we close a requisition, we want to make sure that every applicant is notified that the requisition has been closed and they're not being considered for that position. And we are working with Frontline on that.
And that wasn't happening before, though?
It was not happening.
Okay, so that's an improvement that we need to make sure, because that's also part of the retention policy, so, not policy, I'm sorry, part of the retention procedure. So once they're acknowledged, they receive an automatic response back, and once they've gone through the interviewing process, but having that interaction back, that it's just really important, because that's how we're going to have people come to Norwalk and say, wow, no, they're responsive. Fortunately, I didn't get the position. However, if another position becomes available, maybe I'll be considered for that. So I think it's more of that acknowledgement is really critical in keeping the retention of future employees.
Absolutely, and we are working on that.
Thank you.
Okay, sure thing, Heidi. Anyone else? No? Okay. Thank you, Javier.
Thank you.
So both of those policies, Heidi, need to be approved by the board?
They do.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so a motion to approve? You want to do them both
Yes.
concurrently? Okay, Heidi Keys, seconded by Julie Corbett. Any discussion by board members?
Just Kate is very impressed with what we've done.
Good.
And we're ahead of them on some policies.
Good, we're happy, thank you.
Good.
Good, thank you. Thank you, Frank. Thank you. Thank you,
All right.
policy members
Barbara?
and board, of course.
One of the things that was stuck out to me in this policy was the inspection of the playgrounds, which I'm not sure we've been doing regularly. I think because it sort of falls in the cracks between Parks and Recs and the school district. Do we have a plan, Dr. Adamowski, for how to address that?
Well, it's not in the cracks. It's clearly the domain of the Parks and Recs Department. They own control the playgrounds. For example, Tom and I are meeting with the Silver Mine SGC, I think in the next week or so. And they have two concerns. One is widely recognized, which is that driveway situation. We're going to submit a capital budget plan for that for next year. But the other is their playground. So to address that, we will have to involve the Parks and Recreation Department, because they are the only ones that can do that. And again, they will need to submit a capital budget item. And, we would hope that they would do a couple of playgrounds per year in the same way that we're doing a couple of cafeterias per year.
I mean, the policy calls for an annual inspection, and I'm just not sure that's actually happening.
Yeah, and again, I'm not sure, I assume that's a safety inspection. A lot of our playgrounds are very old, I'm sure they would not meet current standards. So I'm not sure where we go with that, other than to be on some kind of a replacement schedule.
Well, I think we could notify the city that there is this, I know in the 6th taxing district, we have a playground on our own property that residents fundraised and installed, and that does get inspected every year. And there are, I think because of the liability issues of what can happen on a playground, so that is a state law, and we should just hold the city to it, and I don't know, maybe we even ask them for proof of that inspection. I don't know if we want to go there.
That's kind of where I'm going with
Okay,
this,
I think that's something we can certainly do in our discussions with them. Do you know who inspects these?
I know we hire someone privately to do it.
Privately, so there are actual playground
Yeah,
inspectors?
I think they're maybe affiliated with playground company installers. I know we use the same guy, and
it's a little bit of a racket, because he'll be like, oh, you're missing this one part, you know, the part's $1,000 or something, but, you know, you gotta do it to stay legit.
All right, so Tom and I will make a note of that, and
if I get the name of it, I'll send it to Tom.
All right, Tom.
What are we doing?
Costing me a lot.
Yes, we were just having comments, and now we're about to vote on these two policies.
I don't understand how we got to playgrounds from there.
It's
Because
in
it's
the
under
policy for the
safety.
safety.
Oh, safety, I'm
It's
sorry,
under
I was just
safety
thinking about
facilities.
recruitment.
One of those little details in the policy that pops
We're
up.
combining them.
Got it.
Okay, so we're gonna vote on both these policies, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you. We will now, move on, to, I guess, maybe Mr. Lyons' last official act here, ratification of two contracts. Ratification of the collective bargaining agreement between, the Norwalk Board of Education and the Norwalk Federation of Teachers, as well as ratification of the collective bargaining agreement between, the Norwalk Board of Ed and the Norwalk Association of School Administrators. Mr. Lyons, the floor is yours.
I'd like to move approval of both of the contracts in items 7 and 8.
Okay.
All right, second.
Okay.
We completed both of these contracts through mediation. We were not required to go into arbitration. I sent a memo to the board explaining what I considered to be the highlights of the contracts. I think they're very fair. They continue our multi-year approach to negotiating these agreements. They're very fair to the unions in terms of compensation and benefits, but they also provide some increased flexibility to the administration, which has been one of our objectives. You know, they are well within, in fact, better than state parameters in terms of expense to the district. So I think these are both very good contracts for the Norwalk Public Schools, and I urge that they be approved.
Okay, well, we have a motion. Yes, Dr. Kimball?
Question. When you say better than the state, I was surprised. From our perspective, it's a very good contract. When you say better than state parameters, what are you referring to?
Well, for instance, the 3-year total increase for NFT is 7.01%, which is among the lowest in the state negotiated so far this year. The settlement average over 19 settlements this year is a 3-year projected total increase of 8.9% versus 7.01% in ours.
Well, that begs my second question. How did it come about? Because I thought I had read your email wrong. 7.01 on the one hand,
Yep.
and an increase in premiums.
Correct.
From 17 to 20.
From 17 working its way up to 20.
That is kind of, in my mind, unique, unless I'm missing something, that both. I usually, my experience is.
You trade one off for the other.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it didn't go to arbitration.
No, it did not.
What was the carrot? How did this work?
I think it was my devilish good looks.
And it's been my final question, it's been ratified?
Yes, the unions have each ratified these contracts already. And the procedure here is we would be approving tonight, these big red-lined documents, which is the actual content. And with our approval, the unions having already approved, the law firm will just turn this into a final document. Mike will sign, the union presidents will sign, and we're done. And one of the things that we also wanted to do here was to break apart the fact that for years these contracts have been negotiated on the same cycle with the two most significant unions in our system. So we were able to get NASA to agree to a 2-year contract instead of 3.
Right.
With NFT still getting a 3. So probably we would go back to 3-year contracts with NASA the next time it comes around. At that point, they'll be staggered. So you won't have to negotiate them at the same time each year.
Okay. If I may, because Mike and I were involved in a different discussion in this room a number of years ago with Tom Mooney on the salary schedule and how there was a gap in the middle of it. It's so different from what I'm used to. I don't fully understand this. But it looks to me, well, on the one hand, I still see what I call longevities beginning at 22. Was the goal to somehow smooth it out So,
We actually did smooth it out the last time around.
okay.
And we also compacted the number of steps.
Correct, we compacted
We used to
steps.
have, I think, 31.
Oh, yeah, there was a ridiculous number of them. So the last time around, our real focus was simplifying and smoothing out that process. Here, we'd already accomplished that, we didn't want to mess with it, so we just treated
Yeah,
that as.
It looks like you did. I was
built in.
curious.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was last time's. And this time, we were also focusing again on administrative simplifications. A simple example, the way the contract was worded, we had to wait, until the end of August in some cases to hire new teachers.
End of July for the transfer process to be over.
Because of, bureaucratic steps required in the contract. We've now pushed that back to May. So it puts us in the market at a much better time to be hiring teachers. You don't want to be hiring teachers, a couple of weeks before the start of the school year.
Yeah, this was a big step forward.
Yeah.
Just one final one. This is my own understanding. Grandfathered doctorate and doctorate stipend, how are they different? What's grandfathered here?
We used to pay, or I don't know if it was another step, but if you had a PhD, I think we're on a different pay scale, and now you just get a stipend. Those people we changed the way PhDs are handled.
I see, so
the previous members were
I got it, I got it.
grandfathered.
I
Anyone new doesn't get the same benefit.
I got it.
I don't remember what the benefit was.
I got it.
There's a number of grandfatherings that we've worked in here so that some of the more expensive benefits would not be applicable to people hired after the start date.
Dr. Adams, maybe you remember, but I think the standard district just gives a stipend for a PhD.
Correct.
And it was part of our steps.
Okay.
And I think
That's
you were
correct.
grandfathered, and then anyone new.
It was a lane in the salary schedule as opposed to a
So
stipend.
we changed it to a stipend, going forward.
Well, from my former perspective, I would have questions about that, but that's a good. One last thing, after how many days was it in the same assignment? 40? Do you actually get any benefits? It doesn't say consecutive days, 40 days, same position, you get a long-term daily.
What page are you on?
Oh, I don't know, I'm just looking at my own notes.
Oh, okay, I'd have to.
Okay, all right, so I know 40 days in the same position, you're bumped up a little bit on your salary, well, how much you get per day. But but you basically become a long-term sub, do you have any benefits, or you just get the, benefits kick in after the 40 days? Okay.
One other thing I should point out, it's a technicality, it's something that lawyers care about, so normal people probably don't, but there's, on page 90 of this document, one of the things that we identified as a problem is that every time you turn around, somebody pulls out an old MOU, Memorandum of Understanding from 1943, that they've been keeping in the safe. We saw that at a meeting a few meetings ago where
There was one on a
union reps
napkin.
pulled out an MOU and said, well, you can't go to a full year at the school there because of this thing. Now, we don't agree that's a proper interpretation of the thing, but I think, the union has a drawer full of these things that they've gotten signed, in some cases by school principals. Astonishes me, we've had HR directors sign these things without any knowledge of the board, we've had school principals sign them without any knowledge of the board, and we end up getting stuck with them as amendments of our contracts. So we put a provision in here that says that each party has to present to the other all of the side letters in their possession by September 30 of 2019. And that we would then have a committee that between then and January 3 of 2020 has to evaluate these things. And if there are any problems with them, we have the right to push it into negotiation, mediation, and arbitration. So if we've got some of these, antediluvian things from the 1970s, we would be in a position to force them into negotiation and if necessary, arbitration, instead of being stuck with them forever, which is where we've been. So that's actually long-term, potentially very valuable.
So how many did we get?
I think there's 30 or 40 of them.
That sounds about
Some of them are quite old.
Yeah.
Now, we are going to follow a practice going forward where only the superintendent can recommend these to the board, right? So in the past decade or so, superintendents have been signing them, HR directors, assistant directors. We actually discovered one that was signed by a principal and the NFT president. That's direct dealing. That's actually a violation of labor law. So it's very, very good to clean these up. But going forward, this really, whenever you talk about a side letter, you're talking about a modification of the collective bargaining agreement.
Yeah.
That needs to be recommended by the superintendent and approved by the board.
Exactly.
So that will take, this has been something that has worked to the advantage of the union and quite often not to our students in the past. And I think we'll be on a much sounder course in the future.
Yeah.
Brian?
Yeah, sorry, I want to say a couple things because I'm going to leave right after this vote and spend the last few minutes of my anniversary with my wife, who I haven't seen most of today.
It's dedication.
In any case, I do want to, I'd like to commend Chris Sugar, who came on relatively recently to this process, to this school district, and really stepped up his game. And, we're going to have a new negotiations chair on the next board. And I think having him brought along with us will help the next board tremendously, whoever lands that important seat. Not to mention getting these things off cycle, where I got to tell you, this year it was like we didn't know which contract are we talking about today.
I know.
And these things go on hours, these sessions, and it's very tedious. So that's going to be very helpful for future boards. And I'm going to save all my accolades for Mike till Wednesday night. But thank you for leading us on the negotiations committee all these years.
Thanks.
And I'll just say, it really was. This summer was a really long summer because we had these two contracts plus a few others which are still not.
Nurses,
full
ESG, and we did the
Techs.
techs. We did the techs earlier.
Yeah.
We got a privatization clause into the techs contract. We have one into the food service workers contract. Same as with the custodians. Can't lay anybody off, but you can replace by.
And we had some grievance work as well. But I will say,
busy summer.
We were there late one night, and Yvette was super helpful. She brought a lot to the table. I think she's in the wrong line of work, actually. You should go to labor negotiations, Yvette. Yeah.
You were
great.
Sorry, we had that MOU handed to us on a handwritten piece of paper. We couldn't even tell
who had signed it.
Did we ever figure out who signed that?
I think we thought it was Anthony Shannon. I think. I don't know if we ever.
I think so.
Finalized that.
Those are done.
But it was literally handwritten out and signed, and we never saw it, and that's got to stop.
So, okay, so all in favor of approving these two contracts? Unanimous, 8-0. Thank you very much. Good night, Brian. Say hello to Mary.
Happy anniversary, Brian.
Our next motion will be recognition of ADHD Awareness Month, month of October.
I'll move to approve.
Okay, Barbara seconds. Any discussion? Okay, having had a kid with ADHD, I'm all in favor. All in favor, great. That's 7 of us now. Recognition of Bullying Prevention Month in October. A motion, Barbara, seconded by Heidi Keys. Any discussion?
Are we sure we should be preventing bullying?
It's not a bad idea, Sarah.
All right.
Do you think? Can you get on board?
I'm on board. I
That's a tough one.
appreciated the statement highlighting
Tough
the
one.
tangible actions that we're taking against bullying, including the PBIS.
So, all in favor? All in favor, all 7 of us. That concludes actions. We will now move to information and reports. Mr. Hamilton, let's have a short and brief summary, please. I've been here longer than I wanted to be.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is going to be at least a 3-hour report. No, we're 10% of the way.
Torture us back.
Yes. 10% 10% of the way through the school year, 25% of the way through fiscal year. As you can see, we've spent about 15% of the budget, which is right where we would expect to be at this time in the year. The only variance really from last year to take note of is under the other services, the 500 series accounts. You'll see there's a substantial increase compared to last year. That's really just the prepayment of our transportation contract. We do get a substantial prepayment discount for paying early, so it happened to have been paid right after September last year, and it was paid in September this year. So that's really the only thing to note here. If there's any questions, happy to answer them, but at this point, nothing significant to report, no indication of any budget problems or concerns at this point.
Great, very good to hear.
That's what we like to hear.
Okay, committee reports, I guess we'll start with Julie.
Sure. Quickly, so we just had the workshop on the report from the Counseling Redesign Committee. We are working on finishing the last kind of data gathering from that work and putting that in the final report, which you all will get in, I believe, early December. And I think just one piece that I would like to note on that is that it did come up in some of the public comments tonight about counselors are taking on additional tasks because of the redesign and what they want to be doing and what they know they need to be doing, but additional items are not being removed from their schedules yet. And so I just want to kind of throw that out there as something to keep a close eye on so that we don't burn out our counselors when we're promising them that we're providing them additional supports, and yet we're not actually making their lives any easier yet. So with that, you'll get it in December.
Thank you. Mike?
Okay, two contracts still under negotiation, as I mentioned, the ESG and the nurses. We actually had a tentative agreement with the nurses, and then the nurses called back and said they didn't agree to it. They wanted something else changed, so we're real close. ESG, we have proposals out, still some negotiation to go. I don't see either of those contracts as ending up in arbitration or anything like that, and I've got 5 weeks to go, and I'll try to see if I can knock them off before I leave.
Okay, that's great. Ms. Lemieux?
Bien sûr. So the SPED ad hoc committee met, I don't remember when, but recently, 2 weeks ago, thank you. And we talked about, Yvette gave us an update of the new special education program descriptions with entry and exit criteria. And then we spent a fair amount of time talking about how NSPEDPAC is doing, the parent advisory group that was formed. And by all accounts, they are having robust, productive discussions centered around improving communication and services in the district. That's all I got.
Okay, on facilities, we did not have a meeting in September because we had a conflict with the, I can't remember what it was. Wasn't the
debate or the forum?
Forum. Maybe it was that. Maybe it was a special ed forum, candidates forum. Anyway, we had a conflict, so we did not have one. We tried to reschedule, but I think at this point we'll just be in October. We'll get an update on all the different construction plans and how the timing of things is looking. There really is no major developments. There is still work going on the Columbus at Ely plan. We have finally had contact with the National Park Service, and we have also deduced that, the funding we got from the feds at the Ely site, or the city got at the Ely site, were for improvements, not acquisition, which changes the dynamic a lot in our favor, but it is still not a layup, and we still have a long ways to go. But it is being worked on, and the superintendent, the mayor, and a whole team of people have been in Hartford several times as this works its way. So I think that's pretty much where we are in facilities right now. Heidi?
Yep. We passed, thank you for passing safe and secure school facilities, and then the minority recruitment. So that's done. We've been working, as Bruce had mentioned, thank you for that, because I think the policy committee is really trying to get through many of these state mandated policies. During our last meeting, it was kind of off the table for a while, and then on, and then off, and then back on, which is our food charging policy. So we did have a very productive meeting during our last policy meeting. I want to thank Frank and Tom for really delving in and working on that, as well as Julie. We looked at that again. We looked at Stamford's more closely. We're still in contact with Danbury. We really wanted to look at schools that are similar to our demographics and what we can do in our food charging policy. So there's still some more work and some more language that we need to add and some corrections, but we're going to continue to work on that, and that will be brought back for our next policy meeting. And that's it.
Thank you. Bruce?
For what it's worth, most boards, or many boards, do not even have a policy committee, at least in Connecticut, and do not have as robust a committee system as we do. I'm kind of shocked by it, but that's how it works. And also, CAVE is constantly being driven nuts by the state legislature every time they change something. Okay, they have to go through all the motions and pass it down. So it's interesting. Anyway, we met, the Curriculum Instruction Committee met before this meeting. We had updates on digital literacy, the L program, which we discussed here in the full board. An overview of some of the changes to K-12 math curriculum. We will revisit these items the new committee will revisit these items as the year progresses, and they have more information about the initiatives that are going on. So I look forward to discussing that. And then we will be discussing, hopefully, not sure we get all the information in October, but in November. It's something I'm curious about because we talked about the summer slide, and we will once again compare the end of the year and before, the end of the year and beginning of the year student scores for the kids who are in the various summer programs. We want to make sure we're getting the results that we're paying for. Okay, so that should be interesting.
Okay, Barbara.
Norwalk Acts recently received funding to lead a community planning process around social emotional learning and trauma-informed care. MJ Sharona, a very involved Norwalk parent and professional social worker, has been hired to lead this work. She's on the School Governance Council of PONUS as well as part of the Counseling Redesign Committee, and she'll help the district and community develop common language and understanding of SEN trauma and map out current SEN trauma supports for students and identify any gaps. As part of the planning grant, Norwalk Acts is hosting trainings by Joanne Freiberg on school climate on October 24th and 25th, and restorative practices on December 2nd and 3rd. MJ is working with the district and community providers to fill the 25 slots for training that were allotted by the funder. There's been outreach from the district about additional trainings, and Norwalk Acts hopes to coordinate these opportunities over the winter. They're also hosting and supervising a social work intern from Sacred Heart University this year through April. Anna Melina Moreno, a Norwalk High School graduate, is working in partnership with the school district during her internship. She's specifically working with the ELL population under the supervision of bilingual social workers Rudy Matute, I hope I'm saying that right, at Brian McMahon High School, and Brendy Franco at Norwalk High School. She is working with Helene Becker as part of the ELL initiative of Norwalk Acts. The PTOC unanimously elected Lisa Nutso as president, Shiloh Martin Adams as treasurer, and Shamiz Shular for communications officer. They are still seeking a secretary and a vice president so that poor Mike Byrne can retire after 7 years of service. Initiatives to support our PTOs and PTAs as they work to raise about $1 million for our schools include a PTO handbook to include the new permitting process, creating better financial processes for the PTOs, enrichment, and fundraising.
Okay. So as we go to board member announcements. Barbara, we can start with you and work our way back.
We have the launch of Basics coming up this week, tomorrow. I can't even remember what day we are. I'm so sleep deprived at this point. So that's exciting. Cool initiative.
Okay, Bruce?
Nothing.
Heidi?
No, thank you.
I don't think I do either. Sarah? Oh, no, I guess I should say, I did go to Jefferson School last week. They had this interesting kind of farm-to-table day where there were, I wish I could remember it. I think the Hour did a story on it. There were like a dozen different farms were represented, everything from apples to broccoli
And they made these smoothies for the kids that were banana kale. And they had little glasses of cider, which were watered down, and they had cardamom in them, of all things. And then they had a pasta was the main course with this broccoli straight from the farm. And there were some farm reps, food court workers there. Lisa Lenskol was there, and the kids. It was amazing. They were really excited. They were really into it. So it was a neat little event.
Cool.
Sarah?
I'm fried.
Yeah,
I'm done. Really done.
Toast.
You're done, Mike.
I'm done.
This is your swan song, as they
Finito.
say. Okay, Julie Corbett.
One quick note, I had the privilege of, along with several other board members as well as staff, of attending the celebration at Tracy Elementary. It feels like it was a long time ago now, but I just looked at the date. It really wasn't that long ago. And it was such a privilege to see how much Tracy has changed from when I first came to Norwalk 4.5 years ago. And so congratulations to the staff, to the leadership team there, all of the students and the parents and families there, and to the district as well for continuing to support, and the board for continuing to support the work that's happened at Tracy. It really is a phenomenal and happy, joyful learning environment there. So that was great. It will make, when I do have to make a decision about where to send my child, it is making my decision making much harder. And what a privilege that is to be able to have a tough decision to make about what environment is best for my child. I will be attending the next workshop, so if I can, I'll reserve a kind of final statement for them because I am also fried. But with that said, I do want to say one quick note to Mr. Lyons, because 5 years ago when my husband first was getting relocated to Connecticut, I work in education. I started researching the school system, and I randomly emailed Mike Lyons and said, can we talk? And he took my phone call, and from when we were living in Chicago, and based on what he said, I felt comfortable enough to move to Norwalk. And so we may not agree politically on many issues, but I have to say thank you for your leadership to the board. Thank you for taking my call as a random potential future constituent, and little did I know that 4.5 years later we would be sitting here. So with that, I'll save my short, abbreviated swan song for the next workshop.
Thanks.
Okay, well, I think we need to approve the minutes for September 17th and October 1st. Could I have a motion? Julie, seconded by Sarah. Any corrections for September 17? Barbara?
Page 4, paragraph 3. Ms. Meyer asked for a report to the Ad hoc Special Education Committee about the district's child find processes and whether the district is identifying students before or after 3rd grade to ensure we're identifying students as we are required to by law. Page 9, para 4. Ms. Meyer Mitchell asked for a report to the Curriculum and Instruction Committee regarding points 18 and 19, Next Generation Science Standards and K-12 Literacy Design. And page 11, para 6, I did not say a new art center. There are new artists in residence at the Regional Center for the Arts.
Okay, anybody else? And then October 1st? Any changes? Barbara?
Page 4, para 2, Ms. Meyer Mitchell asked for the statistics on page 17 of the presentation to be broken down into separate columns for school counselors, social workers, and school psychologists, and to possibly add a column for college and career center staffing.
Okay, motion for the corrections to be accepted?
The minutes as corrected.
Minutes as
corrected. Right.
Brain dead.
By the way, we'll have that information in the final report, which is being worked on now, that you'll get at your November meeting. Yeah.
Okay. Well then, a motion to adjourn. Sarah?
Oh, yeah.
Mike, don't you want a second? Mike can second.
Raising my hand until you
Second that.
All in favor? And it's nice knowing you.
Thank you to the team that stayed